What's up, everyone, and welcome back to the Fast Life Podcast, which is brought to you by none other than Simpson motorcycle helmets. It's a new year, folks. It's time to get a new lid and get ready for a new riding season. No better time to go check out simpsonmotorcyclehelmets.com and, get yourself dialed in with something nice and fresh for the 2024 riding season. You can check out all the different models, finishes, and visor options on their site. And, get yourself dialed in, man. On today's episode, we have Hot Scott, who is the man who pulled me off the side of the road during the FXR tour when we were stranded in New Mexico. Come to find out, this dude has a very, very interesting and rad life, and I still have more questions after sitting down with him with this podcast. I wanted to kick this year off by doing a road trip to the Pacific Northwest with my wife, surrounding myself with a lot of people that I find very interesting and inspiring. So this guy is one of them. His wife is also a rad artist as well. They both met in the LA area. They both work in the movie industry, and they're both FXR riders. So I'm really honored to have Scott on the podcast, and I really hope you guys enjoy it. But first, let's hear from these sponsors, and then we're going to get right into this episode with Scott. Over the past year, Cowboy Harley-Davidson has been putting in the work to help bring together various aspects of the motorcycle culture within the Austin, Texas community. They have supported not only the podcast, but also many local bike events and shows, including our FXR tour. I want to express my gratitude to the entire staff at Cowboy Harley for their support. I've had the pleasure of purchasing 2 bikes from Cowboy Harley-Davidson in my lifetime. Most recently, I bought a Lowrider ST, which was dialed in with a few custom parts that I pretty much got to have on every bike. Whether you are in the market for a new or used Harley-Davidson or looking to get your motorcycle customized, repaired, or simply maintained, you can count on their professional parts and service departments to get your bike dialed. To get in touch with them, you can visit their website, cowboyharleyaustin.com, or simply drop in and start a conversation about your next or even your first Harley-Davidson. And don't forget to give them a follow on the gram to stay up to date with all the other happenings and events going around in the Austin, Texas area. I have been using Lexin moto products for the past 6 years, and they have been an integral part of my riding experience. My journey with them started with their original FT4 headset and tire pump, but now I've upgraded to their top-of-the-line Novus headset, which features 40mm Lexin Plus speakers, CVC and DSP noise cancellation technology. With the Mesh 3.0 power technology behind it, I can connect with up to 32 riders on any given ride. Their new P5 Advanced Smart Tire Pump is a must-have for every biker. I always keep one in my garage, and it comes in handy during long trips if my phone battery or tire pressure is low. For more information on these fantastic products, check out their website, lexin-moto.com, and don't forget to use the offer code FASTLIFE at checkout to save you 15% on your order. And lastly, head on over to Instagram and give these guys a follow at Lexin Moto.
Hey guys, you ready to let the dogs out?
Fast Life Podcast.
All right. Back in the garage here at the Hot Scott compound. Do you have a name for this garage yet?
Nope, just the garage.
You got to have like a cool name, and like you get your wife to make a cool mirror with the. Yeah. I think the Hot Scott compound is I
like it.
It's a pretty cool one, man.
Hot Scott's Hot Chop Shop.
Hot Chop Shop.
Right. There's no shopping going on here.
Yeah. All right, I hope that was working. Yeah, I think it was. All right, cool.
Okay.
Well, it's once again, the hospitality is being given to me again while I'm sitting back at your house in your garage 2 months later, a little over 2 months later. And dude, when you picked me up off the side of the highway, or the offsets, to be more clear, you started telling me all these rad stories that I immediately was like, dude, we got to do a podcast at some point. Not just for the fact of what you did to help me on the FXR tour and the fact that you got 4 killer ass FXRs lined up in the garage, but dude, you've lived a fucking wild life.
Yeah, a little bit.
I think so.
Yeah. I don't know. Like when you said we got to do a podcast, I'm like, I'm not that interesting. I'm not an industry guy. I'm just a guy,
Well, that's what, I don't know. That's what fuels everything though. Like stories like yours, just, you got like a Forrest Gump kind of story. You know what I mean?
I don't know about that, but
it's kind of like one day you just walk into this and now you're doing this. And I'm sure there's more context to it, but
yeah. I mean, there's,
growing up in Santa Cruz, right?
Yeah.
How do you like, how do you get to play in bands or play in a band? How many bands was it? Was it one? Was it a handful?
And there was a bunch of bands. I mean, that whole Bay Area of California had like a very vibrant like punk and metal scene. And, I grew up in Santa Cruz where like, skating was God.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If you wanted to play Little League, you went 45 minutes over the hill to San Jose to play Little League. There was no, you skated.
Yep.
Like my elementary school had this huge demo with like all the Santa Cruz and Santa Monica Airlines skaters, like Naudus was there. And it was like, it was like 1,000 kids in the pouring rain. They set up this little like, mini hip thing, and like none of the pros skated it, and all these kids were skating in the rain, and like it was like we were like crazy about it, so obviously like that whole like skateboard culture was like super heavy there. And with that, I think a lot of people who got into like punk and music in like the late 80s, I was like in 5th grade in like 88 or something like that, right? Is that right? I don't know. Something
what
like
year
that.
were you born?
77.
Okay, so you're like 4 years old, 4 or 5 years older than me.
Yeah.
I'm 41 I'm 42 this year.
Yeah, I'll be 47 in like a couple weeks.
Oh shit.
So yeah, but I think that there was a big tie-in with like the skate videos and the music in the skate videos.
Okay.
There was like the music that those skaters put into those videos then was like hugely influential to us. So it's
probably not music you're hearing on like the radio station and shit, right?
No, it was all like punk,
Yeah.
And like Thrasher did like, all those like skate rock comps and stuff. There were these cassette comps you could get from Thrasher, and they had like all these like underground punk and hardcore bands and stuff. And that really kind of fed the whole scene there. And so there was a bunch of punk bands and hardcore bands and some metal bands. Going into the 90s, metal kind of like fell out of fashion a little bit, and like it was more punk and like alternative and grunge and shit like that. But by the time I was into punk and metal, and when all the other stuff came along, I was a hater.
Oh yeah,
yeah, totally. So, but so
what is the deal? I gotta ask this: like, why do people not like grunge music? that are like traditional metal punk?
I mean, if you're of a certain age group, I think like the best example is this. There was a tour. I was in junior high school, and it was called the Clash of the Titans, and it was Slayer, Megadeth, and Anthrax. And the opener for the tour was Alice in Chains.
Okay, one of my favorite bands.
We fucking hated Alice in Chains. We hated it. We were like, what the fuck? But by that point, I was young, but I was already into all this like punk and metal stuff. And so I was already listening to like Obituary and Sepultura and shit, and like into this heavier shit. And you fucking have like some like lame ass like Alice in Chains and fucking all the stuff that started coming out of there.
What the fuck is all this singing stuff?
Yeah, it was weak. You know, it wasn't fucking powerful sounding, So, and I still hold those feelings to this day.
Okay,
I'm a Nirvana hater. I'm an Alice in Chains hater. I'm a grunge hater. And I'm a
Where does Tool fall in the category?
So I saw Tool open for Rollins Band at the Catalyst in Santa Cruz, and I was still in high school. I was probably a junior or something like that. I might have been, I think I was a junior in high school. And my buddy, his mom was a waitress at the Catalyst. It's this big rock club right on the main drag in Santa Cruz, and Rollins Band was playing. We wanted to see Rollins, Black Flag. We were excited about that. Yeah. And Tool opened, and that was like when they had their like opiate like tape, like the first EP, and they were fucking sick. It was amazing, I think that like they were still like weird enough then, that they were like acceptable, Yeah.
And those first two albums they came out with, they were more into the metal side of things, and then because they kind of got their fame as the grunge era and your Rage Against the Machine, that whole thing, right? Yeah. They kind of fell into that category with those groups, in my opinion.
They kind of like, they carved their own path in a way, but they became like a bit self-indulgent, with their like rise, they're kind of like this real like heady, like, we're the new Pink Floyd kind of thing. Yeah, whatever, dude. So
fair enough.
But like the early, those early Tool shows were, I only saw them that one time, but it was just like, they might as well have been on PCP. It was fucking just like crazy energy, crazy, like it was wild. It was good,
So continue. Like you're just.
So, I was playing in bands and stuff, and, Santa Cruz was like, if you really wanted to like be into the music shit, you went up to San Francisco and Oakland. You went up to see shows at Gilman or the Trocadero or whatever. And, you went and saw stuff up there. Santa Cruz is like, there was the Vets Hall, and there was like the like kind of like legacy punk bands would come through, like Adolescents and DI and Agent Orange and that kind of stuff. And like, it was cool, but it was like, you wanted to see like the new cool shit or whatever, like you go up to the city. So, we were going up to the city a lot. And, eventually I moved up there. I think when I was like 21, and I was living in the like Hayes Valley, like Divisadero and Fell, and we were going to all these basement shows and warehouse shows, and like.
See, that would have been an experience, though.
Oh yeah,
because every time you hear music live, even if you don't like the way it sounds on a radio or you don't feel it, live changes. In my opinion, it changes the way it feels 100%.
Totally. I'll
hear a song like, I'm a huge Deftones fan, probably not in your wheelhouse, but. There's songs in Deftones. He's like cringing over here. There's songs that Deftones play that like listening to it through through headphones or on the speakers. Like I don't feel it, but then seeing it live, it's just like fuck, dude. Yeah. It changes the experience, and I never hear it even on the radio or on like speakers now. I always hear it the way I heard it live after that experience. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, totally. And it's like that was a huge thing, and like really for us, it was like the more intimate and the more. It was like a private unknown thing, the better it was. It was like, this band is so fucking obscure. Like nobody knows this. We were the first. And that was the thing that was like special to us. And we were fucking, I don't want to say we were like snobs about it, but there was definitely like, there was a hunt. And this is like, well before internet anything. Yeah. So it was like, you had to like go out and see shit. You had to go to record stores and see flyers. Like that's how you found shit. Like the first tours I went on, I mean, we had an atlas. Yeah. Right? You would atlas yourself to the city you're going to. You find the punk record store. You find a flyer for the show you're supposed to play and ask to do the record store how you get there. Damn. I mean, that was like how it was. And it was like, you're making your cold call, calling people on the phone, like you booking a tour. Like back then, like the most expensive part of going on like a little punk rock tour was the phone bill. Damn. It was like you got some $700 phone bill.
Oh yeah, because you had like long distance back in the day was a legit charge. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we were doing that, and like you tried not to use the phone too much, but you had to do that. Like, hey, I heard you did a show for my buddy's band. Like, can you do one for us? We're gonna come through in 2 months.
That's kind of how you kind of rise in those ranks. Is like opening for other bands. And,
absolutely.
Because everybody needs an opener, right?
Absolutely.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, but like back then it was like, it was like magazines. It was like the punk zines and stuff, and like, like the thank lists on tapes and records. Like that's how you found out about other shit. Like, oh, this band's friends with this band. Like,
so I could see why, like, the effort you put into finding things is why you're so much more protective over a culture, right?
Absolutely.
Because you feel like nobody else is putting in that effort because they heard it on a commercial for, a fucking skateboard or some shit.
Yeah, totally. Or, you heard like, like some people like heard the band Sleep on like, they first heard it in Gummo.
Oh,
Sleep was on the Gummo soundtrack, and that's how like a lot of people found out about Sleep. But for us, like we saw Sleep at Gilman, or we saw them at some like shitty warehouse in San Jose, and it was like for us, it was like something different. It wasn't like, oh fuck you saw them at Gummo, like you don't know shit. So, but like my snobbery is definitely worn off now, and I don't care if people listen to you. You do what you like, and whatever makes you happy, and that's cool. But for years, I was a total fucking prick about it.
No, I think it's naturally. I mean, you take that same thing and you apply it to like different parts of the bike scene, and you're definitely it's natural to feel protective over certain aspects of it, right? Certain things that like mean a lot to you. And you just want to make sure that it means the same to other people that are,
right,
soaking it up or using it up or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, like I kind of have like even still like not a beef with YouTube, but like I just have kind of like a resistance to it, because I think with a lot of the music stuff and a lot of the stuff that we spent a lot of time like digging on, and like I was into the punk and metal stuff, and I still am, but I went really heavy into like that like kind of like late 60s to like through the 70s, like obscure hard rock stuff, like obscure ass shit, like Private Press records, that kind of stuff. And like we were like looking for this stuff like in record stores and like through record shows and people like that were like into the shit, like like old school heads who had cool shit we never heard of, and suddenly there's like this generation of kids who just heard everything on YouTube and like, oh, I know it all. I heard that on YouTube. And it's just like, fuck off. Like,
not really my thing.
Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, I heard that. It's like, you know how hard it was to find that record? Like, you have no fucking idea, you know? Well,
there's all that, man. That's culture to the T now, right?
Totally.
It's like, how much of this, I mean, is there going to be anything that's like, can anybody young enjoy something for longer than a week? You know what I mean? Having a brand like Arlen support the Fast Life podcast is absolutely surreal. Decades before I fell in love with motorcycles, the Nest brand was right there innovating and inspiring generation after generation. The brand's long-standing history and dedication to the custom motorcycle industry is truly remarkable. I have been fortunate enough to use many of their products on my Road Glide, Lowrider ST, and FXR chopper over these past few years. I love their 4 and 6 piston brake calipers, wheels, and bagger mid controls. And I use Arlen air cleaners on all my bikes. And even after thousands of miles, the parts still look and feel new. If you're interested in learning more about the Arlen motorcycle products, head on over to arlens.com where you can find out more information and see their vast catalog. And for our listeners, if you drop the Fast Life 10 offer code at checkout, you're going to save yourself 10% on your order. And don't forget to give these guys a follow on Instagram at Arlen Motorcycles to stay up to date with all the happenings around the brand. Now let's get back to the show.
The attention span these days, maybe not. You know, like it's this instant gratification thing. Like I want to hear this obscure prog from Italy from 1972. There it is. Yeah. You had to hunt for that stuff. You know, you had to know the record stores to go to that had like the weird like international section, and you hope to find the thing you were looking for, and like, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't, like I said, never went down that deep down the rabbit hole, but you know, it's like one of those things. Like I always consider myself kind of a lover of music and whatnot, but you know, there's always somebody like you that's like fucking nerd, like going to fucking thrift stores trying to find that, you know, whatever.
Totally.
You know?
Like, you know, like every town, you know, like, and that was the thing we did on tour. You know, it's like we'd go to the record store, see what you can find, you know, see what people are dumping off, go look into like the new arrivals and see what you find, you know, and sometimes you find some cool shit.
Yeah, you got a solid collection in there.
Yeah, I got some stuff. That's like pretty thinned out.
For real?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, fuck, dude, I feel like everything about my life is going chopper right now. So it's like I do want to. I've been talking about it on the podcast, but I set up this, and I was telling you at dinner, I set up this like living room, and a lot of it stems from being at Lichter's house earlier this year, being in your house, and like the art that's everywhere. It's like, man, like when I came back to my house, I'm looking at the empty walls and the fact that I have all these cool magazines and books that are just kind of like, you know, in boxes somewhere.
Yeah.
So I like wanted to create a space in the living room to basically, and nice lighting so that I can have light to read,
right,
or check out a magazine, but it's not like daylight. It's like a nice tungsten bulb kind of thing. Uh-huh. But I've thought about, man, do I get a record player now? Like, do I go down that path? Because is it different? Is it, or is it?
It's different. You know, it's more of a commitment to like the thing. You know, it's not just like your Spotify on shuffle. It's like, this is this record. You're going to listen to side A. You're going to listen to side B. There's a couple songs that are duds, but that's okay because it's part of the package. You know, it's part of how that artist intended it to be presented.
Yeah,
you know, which is kind of like the
lost art of it.
Yeah, exactly. You know, like album listening is like pretty much out the window at this point. You know, everyone's just like shuffling and doing
they just
whatever.
Want the hits. Yeah. And you know what's crazy is like I've obviously there's been those. We've all bought those albums and had one good song on it, but we couldn't figure out if it was good before we bought it, right?
Totally.
But once I find a band I like, I almost want to listen to every song they have.
Right.
And honestly, sometimes it's hard to do that on Spotify. Mm-hmm. Like you have to literally go to the album. Like you can't just like listen to a whole catalog of their songs. Mm-hmm. And but yeah, I feel you on that because I do like really just I love it like music just to kind of set a tone or whatever, you know what I mean, to help me right vibe, right mood.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely. You know, it's funny, there's this old timer here in town, Ralphie, and he comes over here sometimes and like, you know, he doesn't have a garage or his tools anymore to work on his stuff, but he's got like he doesn't have a car. He's got a FXR, 300,000 miles on it.
Nice.
He had a Panhead with 1 million miles on it. He sold in 1988 when he bought the FXR. Fuck. And he's got a Sportster, right? And bikes are like, they're like Chernobyl, you know, they're thrashed. And so he'll come over here and like work on his stuff. And like, he's like, I want to listen to Bob Marley. I'm like, no, we're not going to sit here and listen to Bob Marley all day, but like I found some cool like roots reggae like playlists. It's like all this early reggae shit, and like I put that on. I've actually been listening to it a bunch ever since. I'm like, this is sick, you know, it's cool. And it's stuff like I was a little bit familiar with, but like yeah, there's always something new, you know, even for like someone who like thinks they know it all and they've heard it all. It's like even with like all that like pretty specific like 70s like hard rock, proto metal, like early stuff, like just when you think you heard it all, like some new thing, you're like, dude, how have I never heard this before? Like it's insane, you know, like always something new, you know. Like a couple months ago I heard new shit. I'm just like, damn, like what? Like,
well, man, there's no shortage of music, man.
No,
there really isn't.
Certainly isn't.
So when you started like getting these gigs, like how quickly or how slowly did that transpire into actual like road stuff and travel?
I mean,
you know what I'm saying?
I was in punk bands in high school. We were playing like the Vets Hall Santa Cruz shows and you know, meeting the other like older bands in town, punk bands and stuff. And I wound up like getting into one of those bands. And, you know, I think like 2 months after graduating high school, I did my first U.S. tour.
Damn.
You know, like we did a full U.S. tour, and it was all just phone calls and, you know, no booking agent, no Facebook,
can you say like what was the most biggest takeaway from that experience of the first?
I mean,
to me, it's like that. Just outside looking in, I feel like that would be one of the most rad experiences to ever like have, like a real road trip creating something. Young, new town every night, like it. You know what I mean? Like
new place you never thought you'd go to every night.
Yeah.
You know, we went like, you know, the Northeast to Florida, back across Texas and like everything. And it was like, you know, that was like 1995.
Yeah.
You know, and so it was like very much like, you know, I mean, I left on the tour with like $80. You know, I had a giant bag, like a 2-pound bag of M&Ms. I don't know how I went up with it. You know, and I just like, and it was just like, you know, I just figured I was going to get through it somehow, you know, like that was going to be it, you know, and I did, and it was fine, you know, but but it was just, you know, yeah, it was crazy. You know, I don't think I really knew what to make of it for the first couple trips I did, you know, like for me, it was just like kind of like getting through it and like, you know, playing the shows and like, you know, you meet these people and then you stay at someone's house and like, you know, it was almost like, you know, like overwhelming, you know, just like all that crazy, like road trip, like slumber party shit, like every night for a month, you know? So it's just like at the end of it, you can barely process it, you know? And
well, I just would imagine like it, you know, some kids go to college and then they wild out and you guys are in a rock band.
To me, like thinking about it now, like that was like the beginning of like my commitment to like the lifestyle of like, I'm going to like do this. Like, this is what I want to do. Like, I loved it, you know? And I was just like, and I committed myself to being like shit poor, like living on fumes for like 20 years, right? Like paycheck to paycheck, like just fucking like, we're going to make this music thing happen, you know? No,
it's a trade-off, right?
Yeah, it's an absolute trade-off. And it's like, you know, the experiences I had, I would never trade them for anything. I got to do some amazing, crazy stuff through the years. And it's like, but in the end, it's like, oh shit, like now I got to play catch up. I'm like approaching 40 and like, I'm fucking like have no credit. And like, I'm just like totally fucking, you know, just, you know, job to job, you know, gig to gig and just like waiting for the next tour to start, you know? And it's like with that, you know, like your relationships like are impossible to maintain, family relationships, girlfriends, whatever, like, you know, when you're gone all the time, all this stuff falls apart, you know? Yeah. And it's like, you know, at my peak, you know, touring with like my metal band Saviors, I mean, we were playing like 200 to 250 shows a year in 20 countries for like 10 years.
Fuck, dude. That's like a grind.
It was a fucking grind, dude. And like, it just about killed us, you know?
Was there a point in time when like the road just kind of like, you know, it was just too much? It was just, not too much, but like,
yes,
you were over
100%.
Yeah.
100%. You know, I got to the point where, you know, I was like, by the end of that, I was like, you know, like well into motorcycles. And I was just like, if I'm going to travel, it's not going to be like this. Like, I want to go like ride through these places I've been to. I want to like see that stuff through those eyes. And like, it was definitely, you know, and plus some of the other aspects of it, you know, there was a lot of partying, heavy amount of partying, you know, and I really got to the edge with it, you know. I got pretty fucking crazy. And I think if I would have kept it up, I would have died, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
And so,
Yeah, well, man, traveling to play music, just for the amount of time, the 250 shows a year, and would you say 10 years or
I think like 8 years we did
Okay.
like that schedule. Like
So-
we were going to Europe like 4 times a year. We were like, go to Japan.
to me, like,
do the
right
US.
now it's like right now that just seems like a fucking dream, right? If I was to, in some form or fashion, do that, and I've never played music like that, but I could, my brother did for a while, and watching him on stage, I could see how intoxicating it must feel to be the the way what is it, a maestro, does the orchestra. It's kind of like you're the maestro for the audience as an orchestra, and so
Totally.
like being the person to make those people feel that way it's got to be an intoxicating feeling,
is.
of creativity or creating things. You know
It
what I'm
is
saying?
like when you play a killer show and it was a great response and like you have a killer night, like why wouldn't you want to keep going and doing that?
Yeah.
Like it's fucking awesome, but it's also like, it's not as glamorous as it sounds. I mean, it's like I think Charlie Watts of the Rolling Stones famously said after 30 years of being in the Rolling Stones, he said, or someone asked him, like, what's it been like for 30 years of the Rolling Stones? He's like, oh, it's been like 29 years of waiting around and 1 year of playing,
Yeah.
And there's a lot of downtime. And in that downtime, you can get yourself into some shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Being bored, waiting between shows, traveling.
Yeah. All that travel. And
Yeah. It's hard to pick up any kind of real hobbies when you're on the road, unless you're knitting or writing, maybe photography or something.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, we were mostly sleeping off the night before, there was tours that we did where we weren't even seeing daylight.
Damn.
We had a driver, he would like wake us up like 20 minutes from the venue. We requested that he put on Wasp to get us pumped. So we listened to some Wasp just to get into that into that mode. We get to the show, it'd be dark out. We were in Europe. It was like winter in Europe. So it was getting dark at like 4:00, you know? And like we get there, do our sound check, have dinner, start drinking, play the show, fucking party all night until it was time to get in the bus or a sprinter or whatever and go to the next one. And it was just like, we literally like weren't seeing daylight. It was pretty wild.
Yeah, that's wild, man. Like that, I don't know. I envy it, but that's another life. There's no way to even try to start that. You know what I mean? My son's into music real heavy right now. Nothing that you would be into, but
it's cool
trying to nurture that with him.
Yeah.
He's at that phase where he's like, he wants to look the part before he knows the part. You know what I mean? And so I just had him this weekend, and that was kind of like the conversation. I was like, hey, I get it, because he's spending Christmas money. He's like, I want to get these kind of clothes because I was like, man, like I asked him, I was like, do you want a soundboard and a better microphone?
Right.
Or do you want, and he wanted the clothes. I'm like, man. And I had a long talk with him about it. I was like, you got to fucking play the part, man. How you look and how you are is something that's a byproduct of what you create, and it's not the other way around. You don't dress the part and then become the thing.
Right. Right. Well, I think, today it's like, it's different because, of all the social media and all that, like image is right in your face, like what you look like and what you're doing. And it's like, everyone knows like right away. Yeah. And it's like, like back then it's like, back when I was doing this, like we didn't know what the other bands looked like. Like, we just wore like thrift store clothes, and like, we see some band wearing like gas station shirts. We're like, that's cool. I'm going to get a gas station shirt at the thrift store or something. Like that was about the extent of it, like it wasn't like,
well, I mean, back in the day, you'd probably be, like, I remember from my time of skating, like if you came in wearing, the skate clothing, it's like, hey, yo, do an ollie. And if they didn't, we would clown them.
Totally.
So it's like, you can't, I mean, I get wearing a skateboard shirt. It's kind of like wearing your favorite basketball team or football team shirt. Right. But, just as an example.
It is now. But
yeah.
It's back like, then, that wasn't as widespread,
Exactly. And
if you're wearing like a Powell shirt or a Santa Cruz shirt or something like that, then you were proclaiming yourself to be a skater.
Yeah, exactly. So for me, or for the way I looked at it a lot growing up too, it's like, well, it was easy. Like, there was no social media to put yourself out there. So you were doing this and going to being around people where you can kind of get called on bullshit, right?
Right.
As opposed to now, you can have this whole persona online and never even get out of the house and meet people.
That's right.
And I think that it's made more people want to look the part than live the part. And someone said this to me the other day, and it kind of still resonating with me. He goes, Some people just want to get into choppers because they like the scene. They don't care about the bikes.
Right.
They just like the dress, how people dress, how the chicks look, the music. They just like everything but that thing that brought them together.
Yeah.
You know?
And there's a lot of people who did the same thing with bands.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of dudes who they just wanted to party and they wanted the chicks and they wanted to be the cool dude playing the cool show. And they weren't particularly good at their instrument. And they weren't a particularly good band. There's been plenty of that over the years.
Yeah.
But yeah, the chopper thing's true too.
What else can I say about the ThunderMax products and the team behind them? I have run the ThunderMax tuners on my fuel-injected Harleys years before I met the men behind the brand. Now, for the last 5 years, ThunderMax has not only supported our podcast, but have been a big supporter of everything from small events to the biggest rallies across America. For those of you who are not familiar with the ThunderMax tuners, they replace your fuel-injected Harley ECM and O2 sensors with their proprietary ECM module and wideband O2 sensors. This allows your computer to auto-tune itself based on the readings from those wideband O2 sensors. Adding a new exhaust, cam, or big bore kit has never been easier, with the ThunderMax units eliminating the need for dyno tuning and its reoccurring costs. To learn more about their products, visit thunder-max.com. If you decide to make a purchase, remember to use the Fast Life offer code at checkout to save 10% on your order. Finally, don't forget to follow the team on Instagram at ThunderMaxEFI. Yep. Oh man, it's wild. So you're traveling all over the country, all over the world for the most part. So what inspired you to jump on a bike? Is it just naturally being around the skateboard culture, the rock culture, things like that?
You know, there was like definitely like a crossover with like the skater guys and bikes even back then.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was kind of like out of the skate scene. Like, you know, once I like started touring, I pretty much stopped skateboarding. You know, like I was like fully into music. And, you know, I moved to San Francisco in like 98 and, there was a lot of bikes around and I was immediately just like, fucking, this is cool.
Yeah.
Right. And, you know, I moved to Oakland like after a couple months or whatever, and I was living in this like big punk warehouse, right? As you know, in the early 2000s, that was the thing. You know, you live in some crazy warehouse that's all kind of built out. And there's like 40 people living in there, and it's basically like a big halfway house for band people who are just like on tour all the time. They're here, they're not, they're subletting their room. The room's like $200, like whatever. Like it was just like this big like kind of like creative like epicenter space, you know, and so. One of the things that us band guys did, Oakland is kind of like a screen printing mecca, printing t-shirts, right? There was like a bunch of really big shops there and a lot of like big, like a lot of them were owned by like, you know, older punks. And so they would let us like come and go and like work there, like work at the shop and like you go on tour, you come back, you got a job again, you know, because they always need someone to clean screens or fold shirts or box shirts or whatever. And so I was living in this warehouse and there was this dude from bands I knew and he had his own little print operation. I started working for him, right? And he had this bike. It was a 1978 Honda Hawk, the CB400T, the gold with the blue with the orange stripe, or I'm sorry, blue with the gold stripe. And he rode it. He didn't ride it very often, you know. And so I always like bug him about it, like, dude, what's up with your bike? Like I want to ride your bike. Like sell me your bike. And like, how do I get your bike? And so I pestered him, and I worked for him for like 3 or 4 years. And towards the end of that, like he finally, you know, the bike was like back at his house. It was like under a tarp. It hadn't been started in like who knows how long. And finally, like one payday, he was like, all right, you want the bike? Give me $150 and fucking kick it over. It's yours.
Nice.
I'm like, okay. And it had an electric starter on it, but he disabled it. He didn't believe in it. He thought it was bad for the bike. So it was kick only, you know. And so like, I knew nothing, right? Like, you know, my family, I didn't have any like gearheads I grew up around. You know, I didn't know shit, you know. It's like the one car I had, like when I was like 18, like I knew nothing about that, like, and it had no brakes. And finally I just left it somewhere and forgot about it, you know, like it was just like, it was like some shitty old Datsun, and finally it stopped going. I was like, cool, I'm done. And, you know, I fucking skated everywhere, rode the bus or whatever the fuck, you know? And so, you know, dude's got this bike. So I go to his apartment. He takes the tarp off of it. It's fucking filthy. you know, I don't know about old gas or spark plugs or anything like that. And I just he's like, this is how you write it. 1 down, 4 up, you know, with the shifting. Here's this helmet, gives me like this beat ass helmet. Like the visor is like just frosted over. Like you can't even see through it. I'm just like, cool, this is a motorcycle helmet. Like I don't know any better, you know? And so I kicked this bike like 25 times and it starts.
Oh shit. Dude.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I put on the helmet and I rode around this like little like apartment building, like, you know, like driveway thing, and then off I went. I rode across Oakland to my house.
Damn.
And like, I don't know how I did it, but I did it.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I was fucking pumped. I was like, fucking, I got myself a motorcycle. I got wheels, you know, and like, and, you know, keep in mind, like, I'm still like in like this like music, heavily in my music phase. And because of that, I'm like shit poor.
Yeah.
All the time, you know. I'm lucky to have like $40 in my pocket at any given moment, you know, much less, you know, like more than that, you know, like just squeezing by to pay rent, squeezing by to feed myself. And so to have like a cheap means of transportation, like a motorcycle that gets 40 miles a gallon, as opposed to driving the shared band van around or whatever, if I needed to go do something, you know, it was awesome. So, you know, I get a climber book. There's like this like metric, like bike shop in town, and they like have climber books, and I get spark plugs, and like, you know, the tires are like dry rotted. I never change them, you know, like just like, you know, I rode it around for like a couple of years like that, you know? And,
that's School of Hard Knocks right there is what it is.
Totally.
You know
it was just like, you know, like I wanted it. I wanted to do this, you know, and like, there wasn't really anyone to like help me with it. You know, there was like no dude I knew that was like also into it.
Yeah.
You know, it was just like, I want to do this. I'm doing it. I don't know shit. I'm doing it anyways. And I did it, you know, and I didn't have a fucking endorsement. I never had anyone show me how to ride or anything. I just fucking like figured it out, you know? And so I'd ride from my apartment in East Oakland down to like Fruitvale and like, you know, go to work and like, you know, like it was cool. I loved it, you know? And then, I moved at some point and I was living in this apartment and we went on this big tour, 6-week tour. And I had the bike in this little like side yard. When I got back, bike was gone.
Damn.
Someone ganked it. You know, I had never registered it or anything. Like no insurance. Like I didn't fucking know, you know, I was an idiot. So that was that. And that was it for me for bikes for a while. Yeah. You know, until about like 2010 when I moved, when I started like getting to, you know, Oakland and the Bay Area started getting like very, very expensive. Like all the tech stuff, rents were crazy. You know, everything was crazy. You walk out the door and you need like $100 to walk out the door and do anything. You know, and it was like,
it costs $100 to go outside.
Yeah, totally. And so it was just like, you know, I can't live like this. You know, like when the band was on tour and functioning, you know, like and doing all that stuff, it was, you know, we got by. But as soon as like we got home and like weren't doing it, it was like figure it out. You know, you got to do something. So, you know, I think the last house I was living in Oakland, I was living with like 5 dudes in this like 3-story Victorian like total shithole. We were each paying like $750 a month. You know, and this is like 2010. That was fucking expensive as shit. You know, we went from like $200 rooms to $700 rooms, and it was just like, we were like, dude, like this is crazy. You know, we were all band guys and stuff. We couldn't fucking afford anything more than that. So, you know, by that point, you know, my band had played a lot in LA and I made friends in LA, and this is around the time that, you know, I started playing with, or we started playing shows with Ethan Fowler's band.
Okay.
And so we became friends with him, and, you know, he was like, you know, we would go down there and play a LA show and go to their house and fucking party all night and come back totally wrecked and stuff. And finally they got into a thing where like they needed a drummer. And they're like, do you want to play drums in our band? And I was just like, fucking cool, you know? Like, I love LA. I'm having a great time in LA. And like LA at the time was like way cheaper than the Bay Area. You know, it was still cheap. And so, you know, I got down there and I was kind of like splitting my time between the two. I think I like sublet in my room in Oakland for a little while, and I was kind of like bouncing back and forth, and I was playing with his band. We did some touring, and finally I fully moved down there. And right around then, another bike came into my life. You know, it was a smaller Honda. It was a CM250. And it was all cafe'd out, and it was like at this house, and no one was riding it. Like, I want to ride this thing, you know? Yeah. Like, you know, like I had like the itch like hard, you know, and you know, it's funny that bike that I had that disappeared, I'm pretty sure that it reappeared in a different color, like rattle canned, like primer orange. And a bunch of people were riding this bike, learning how to ride on this bike. And like they would learn how to ride, then they would buy like a sports or something and hand it off to the next guy who wanted to learn how to ride, you know, and probably 4 or 5 people I know. And I'm pretty sure it was the same bike, you know, and, which is pretty cool actually. So, you know, I'm glad that it got to go into other people's lives if that is in fact true.
Yeah, if it actually helps somebody get on bikes and not just got parted out.
Right. And so my bandmate, Austin in Saviors, he got the fever too, right? And so he was riding the orange bike around and just was like fucking taking it everywhere. He was riding on the freeway and going up to like Petaluma and like riding to Santa Cruz and shit from Oakland. I'm like, dude, what? He doesn't even go like 60. Like it's like so beat, you know?
Yeah.
But like he was doing it, you know? And he was pumped. And so him and I like kind of like fed into each other's fever a bit. And, you know, he was working at this tattoo shop in Oakland. And there was bike guys who came around there and they're like, you know, if you guys want a Harley, you know, you should look for a windshield model FXR.
This was like 2010 area?
Yeah, this is like 2010, 2011, somewhere in there. And so we were just obsessed. You know, we were like, we have to get FXRs. We have to get FXRs because these dudes said that that's the bike to get, you know?
Yeah, some patch members came in and said, were they like...
I mean, you know, it was like those guys and like there was other dudes who were like a little more advanced in like the whole thing than us that also had kind of gotten into like, you know, they had like one dude had a shovelhead and one dude had an FXR, but it was like those guys who kind of like, you know, they were coming in the shop and they were friends of the shop and, you know, they were friendly with him and they were like, yeah, you know, if you're really pumped on this, you should find yourself this bike and find one with mags, with dual disc and like, that's what you want to look for. Yeah. And, you know, find one that's like a 91 to 94. So we knew that then. Yeah. 91 to 94 was because they knew, you know, like a lot of people like, you know, do the whole taper shaft shit and like learn the hard way. But like, you know, we had the luck of having some people who guided us a little bit with that. Did
the work.
So we were just like on the hunt on Craigslist, like looking. We were fucking broke. We had no money. We had no money to buy a fucking bike, you know? And so, you know, but somehow we were going to make it happen. And so, you know, he saved and like finally, like I think he sold a couple guitars. He had a bunch of guitars and that he had acquired through all the music stuff and wound up finding this like 93 FXRP.
Damn.
You know, windshield model with the police bags and, you know, like the spring seat and everything. Like totally just decommissioned police bike. And he was fucking just beside himself. The floorboards and all that. And you know, him getting that bike just like lit my fire. I was like, oh, fuck you. Like hell no. Like, you know, I need this. And so I wound up getting a Sportster. I had a Sportster, 97 Sportster 1200S, which is like the dual plug, you know, dual disc, cartridge, shocks, all that stuff. And it was
the taller suspension one and everything, right?
Yeah. And so it was, that was a great bike. And I had that bike for a while. I put a thunder header on it and some fucking bars on it or whatever. But, you know, it was my Sportster and it was killer and it was fast as hell. It was a great bike. Yeah. And, you know, so, you know, by that point I was in LA. He was in Oakland. He moved down to LA about a year later. And so he was around and I got to ride his FXR a little bit. And then I was just like, oh my God, like I have to fucking like, I have to get one of these, you know? Yeah. And so I think within a couple months I had found my bike, which is this bike. Oh, shit. And so that bike is a 93 convertible. It had 8,000 miles on it. It was lowered -2 everywhere. Yeah. Fucking bobtail fender, fucking New England Patriots paint job. Fucking I got it out of New England, you know, but you know, it was a fucking $5,000 bike. Yeah. You know? And it had all the stuff. It had mags, it had a dual disc, and it was like it checked all the boxes. I'm like, cool, this is the bike. And it's been a great bike, you know, and so yeah. That's kinda how it all.
Yeah, that's crazy. So, like, basically, you finally get on these FXRs, like, right in the early aughts, basically. Yeah. 2011, 12-ish. Yeah. Yeah, man, there's part of me. So, like, in that time frame, I was like, really in the big wheel stuff because that's where our money was coming from, you know? But, man, I swear to God, like, just it would have been so rad to kind of be a part of, like, that new wave of FXR, you know, kind of just coming back into the limelight, if you will. Yeah. I mean, because this is right around the time when a lot of people was like the whole FXR community. I feel like that we got going on now. Some of the, air quotes players in it, that's kind of when they were finding it, if you will. And,
Right.
It doesn't matter when you find it. It just matters that you're in it, right? But,
yeah, totally.
But still, it would have been cool to see it then before the rise of the social media around the bike and things like that.
I mean, the aftermarket was like non-existent, I mean, it was like
that the dude, Scott Williams, that he's out of San Francisco, that picture with the like, me doing the blog thing and writing about that situation, I was able to get connected with that dude, and we chat here and there all the time, and I can't wait I might meet him on this trip.
Oh, cool.
But, and that picture was taken in 2012 on a test run before going to, riding down to Born Free.
Right.
And I'm just like, man, like, it's so crazy. Like, so many things, a picture,
right.
Not a great quality picture, but a good picture.
Yeah.
That spoke to like, people, or me at least, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, that bike was definitely one that like got my attention early on. I was like, oh, this is like something totally different than like your stock FXR, and it's like I was saying, like when we got those bikes, like, the aftermarket that now didn't exist.
Yeah, no.
None of these guys were around, and like it's great that they are now. It's amazing, but like there was like you could get like maybe like one or two different LePera seat models or something like that, or you could get like a custom seat from somebody, or you could run a stock seat. And like the $500 risers did not exist. It was like there was a couple companies doing like the one piece T-bars, and that's what we ran. And you find a Thunderheader on Craigslist for $200, throw it on there, and fucking run it until you break it, and buy another one. And like that was just how it was, and like it was crazy to watch it like really explode in like that. Like 3 or 4 years, like by 2015, 2016. I mean, there was all sorts of shit. It was crazy.
Yeah. Well, I think it was something that was just wanted and needed. Like there was no young bike in the Harley world,
right?
There was no young. I mean. It's funny that they picked an old bike to make the young bike, right? But I mean, obviously you had the Dyna and stuff like that, but you just there wasn't anything that was really connecting with, I guess, the 20-year-old culture, the young 30s.
Right.
And I mean, imagine like I'm, 2010, I'm 30 years old, and I'm riding a $20,000 bagger, with all this money dumped in it and shit like that. And it's like, not a thing in the world. I probably pass 100 cool FXRs every day.
Yeah.
Nice Sportster. You know what I mean?
Totally.
And it's just like, I don't know, man. Like, that's why I always say it's like, I get whatever brings you to motorcycles, but it's just the fact that like once you get here, you start to like take a little bit of time to understand the different bikes and where this stuff comes from, because even the styles of bikes, even big wheels, pulled from other parts of the motorcycle custom culture that existed before it, and knowing where all these styles and these flavors come from is important in my opinion.
Absolutely. And, I think that one of the things that is important about like the FXRs in California and all that stuff is I think that like at that time there were enough like older heads around who knew these bikes and regretted selling their FXR, and like that was the best handling bike I ever had, and that like really resonated with the younger guys. They're like, oh, that's the bike then, huh? Like I think that was like definitely something like where it was like, like this is like a good bike. It's not a soft tail. It's not a bagger. It's like this is the bike that like the club guys are getting because it handles and it moves, and like that was exciting to us,
Yeah, I remember the shop I worked at, like in 2009 or 8, right around when Sons of Anarchy came out, like one of the first couple seasons.
Yeah.
And this shop I worked at, he was like the OG bike painter in Dallas, right?
Right.
But, we weren't really necessarily doing big wheels. They hadn't kind of came out yet.
Yeah.
But, definitely a lot of bobbers and, a lot of those like, those kind of like manufactured choppers, the Sucker Punch Sallies, the Iron Horses, Big Dogs.
Yeah.
So we're mainly painting a lot of that stuff. And he comes to work one day. He's like, man, there's this like really cool biker show on FX. It's like, it's, kind of about club culture. And my dude was like all wrapped up into the lore of all this, everything red and white possible, right? Like you look in the shop, there's all these little hints at red and white, and we're in Dallas, right? So it's big no.
Yeah.
But and so he's like, yeah, and they're even riding like FXRs just like the club guys do. And I'm like, what the fuck is an FXR? And I remember that was the first time I ever heard the word FXR. It's crazy that I remember that.
Right.
but it stuck in my head when he brought it up, and I didn't know what it was, and I kind of didn't pay too much mind. And then as I kind of carried on with life, then the bike comes back around and fucking changed my life twice now.
Right.
2 different times. You know what I'm saying?
Totally.
So it's just, it is a great bike. And whatever you got to tell yourself to justify buying it, it's, you know, I just think that, like I had a guy the other day, a good listener to the podcast, a great dude that listens to the podcast, has a bagger, is kind of at a point where he's kind of looking for something new, but doesn't necessarily want to sell off one bike he doesn't necessarily want to like sell the bagger to have an ST. And I'm like, man, just buy an FXR as a second bike. I mean, whatever you're going to buy to go put in an ST or a bagger, you can find an FXR.
Oh, totally. A nice one.
Yeah. So, I mean, even if you got to start on the low end, a $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 FXR, and then just kind of like throw little parts on it,
right.
You'll enjoy every purchase you make. I mean, not that it's not a great bike off the rip. It's hard to be on a bagger. It's an amazing handling bike and comfortable in all these ways, and get on FXR and be like, I don't get it. Of course you're not going to get it, because the baggers that were around at the time did not do what these bikes did, right?
Totally.
And the baggers you're riding now are built off the idea of this FXR. Right. So it's just kind of a hard thing, but it's like, but just ride this bike the way it feels good.
Right.
And instead of trying to ride it the way you ride your bagger.
Right.
And you're going to have a new connection to these motorcycles.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So is it just like, I mean, because you got 4 killers in here, right? And so how do you just get obsessed with it, or are you just like, know what I mean?
So I got the first bike, right? And this is a bike, it's a 93. It's got 8,900 miles on it or something like that in 20 years. Something like that, right? Less. So the thing's barely been ridden. So it's like, let the problems begin. And, you know, back to me, like not being really a wrench, you know, like I didn't have like that mechanical person around me to grow up with or whatever. Yeah. So I just had to fucking figure it out.
Yeah.
You know, and so the problems began, and I was like pumped to figure it out. And I had like, you know, in my like in-depth research of like, you know, I'm going to get an FXR. And you see the thing like, oh, it's a mechanic's bike. And it's like, what does that mean? It's like, well, now you fucking know. Like, like you're going to start working on it and like, you know, learn about like why those stator plugs blow and like why this happens and why that happens. And like the, you know, just like all the little things. And so I started having to tinker with it quite a bit. And like, you know, I didn't have a car at this time. I just had this bike. So anything I wanted to do to the bike had to be done like that day. So I could go to work tomorrow. Yeah. That kind of thing, you know? And so, you know, I was doing like kind of like quick little improvements that I could do. You know, there was no like pulling the motor apart and like fucking doing that. Like I had to have it tomorrow, you know? Yeah. So, you know, whatever little thing I could do, I would do. So, you know, I did a Mikuni and I did a Thunderheader and I did like, you know, eventually like I went on a tour and like had this little shop in LA do like a cam for me without head work, which I learned that doesn't really do anything, you know, like, you know, but that's how you learn those things. Yeah. It's like, you know, now when people are like, I want to put a cam in this bike, I'm like, are you going to do head work? It's like, no. I'm like, well, then don't do it. Like, just wait and do it all, you know? It's like, well, I can't really. I'm like, just wait. Save your money. But
what is save your money?
Yeah. And so, you know, a lot of what I was doing with the FXR kind of like tied back to that Sportster. And the Sportster was just like, it was a really fast bike. And the FXR felt like a bit of a tractor, you know? It was kind of fucking, it was, you know, it was not, you know, like, in the higher like highway speeds, it was better, but like off the line, it had nothing on that Sportster. And so I really wanted to like get it there. And so I was like doing this and doing that, doing these cheap little fixes. And finally I'm like, okay, like this isn't going to do it. So we went on a tour, and the guy from that little shop came upon a motor that had a whole Mackie setup in it. It was a Mackie Megasphere, like heads, cam, a 580 cam, all the shit. And he's like, and I was like, what's up with the motor? And he's like, you want all this stuff? I'll refresh it all, put it in your bike. I'm like, cool, let's do it while I'm gone. So he did it. And so now I get back and I got this Mackie motor, you know, the 580 cam, roller rockers, 30-degree dome top pistons. And it's still an 80-inch motor. But I mean, the thing is a fucking bomb. It is just like, it was terrifyingly fast. It was so fucking rad. When it was fresh, it was fucking amazing, you know? And those motors are like a little notorious for like, you know, when they're fresh, they'll kind of like break everything around them. Like, you know, I warped to inner primary. I like fucking,
God damn it, inner primary?
I was like breaking motor mounts and this and that, breaking fucking, you know, I blew a lifter and like kind of like, I think after the lifter blew, it was never really the same after that. But I got a good like, you know, I probably got a good like 55,000 miles out of it.
Damn, that's a lot.
Out of that motor, yeah, fuck yeah.
Fuck, I'd take that any day of the week.
Yeah, and you know, I think I put that in. You know, I got the bike with like, you know, the 8,900 miles, and I think I did the Mackie kit around 40. And you know, I was riding 20,000+ miles a year because I didn't have a car. I was living in LA. I was living in East LA and working by LAX. You know, so I'm just like fucking doing that every day, and it was.
It's cool you still got the bike, though.
Oh, yeah. It's fucking killer.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I kind of got to a point where, like, the motor was really tired. And I was like, what do I do with this thing? And, you know, at that point, I'd already had the Road King. And I had built my Dyna. And those bikes are both, at this point, like, feeling a lot better than the FXR with the tired Mackie motor in it.
Yeah.
You know, that, you know, this bike's got, like, 95,000 miles on it now, you know. And fucking, so at that point, I bought the V111. And that's been awesome. It's a great fucking motor, you know. I have no complaints. So, yeah.
So how long you had the V111 in it?
It's been in there since like 2020.
Oh, that's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, since the end of 2020, and it's fucking great. You know, it's like just like a super just solid, great power band through all the gears. Like it makes it feel great. You know, and at this point, you know, I've got like a nice clutch and I've got like nice suspension and I've got all this stuff. So like, it's like, you know, I've kind of like,
it's really dialed, you know what I mean?
I've done all the stuff I can really do to it, you know, and so it's a great bike. And, you know, we ride it from here to California a couple times a year. And
so the red one with the twin cam, that you ended up catching a basket case on this one, right?
Yes.
But like, did the whole bike was a basket case, or was just the motor set up? Because the bike's pretty fucking dialed. It's got the whole, you know, was it the Ventura style fairing thing going on?
Yeah, you know, I thought I would try that. I don't know now that I'm sold on it. It may change yet, but yeah, the bike was a basket case. It was a local bike here, and it was in a fire, and it had been torn down and sat for a bunch of years. And I was like, kind of like, I don't know if I want to fuck with this thing. It was in a fire. Like, I don't know if it's like worth it. But I went and looked at it, and I brought a magnet with me, and I kind of ran a magnet all over all the frame, like everywhere I could, you know. And, and it was bare frame, so I could do that, you know, just to see if like the fire had like, you know, damaged the metal to the point where it was like really compromised, you know. Yeah. And I thought it seemed okay, you know, and it seemed like it was like more burnt paint than anything and rust. Yeah. And so I sandblasted it myself. I got like this like shitty little like old school Craftsman sandblaster. Yeah. And at the shop I was working at, there was you know, they had a big like shop compressor. I'm like, we're going out in the lot. I'm going to sandblast this frame. And I just went through the whole thing and got it all cleaned up. I'm like, this thing's fine. It's great. So, you know, the basket case was motor that was like pretty fucked. The trans with a 6-speed in it, BDL enclosed primary, you know, so an enclosed belt. And, you know, I was like, cool, I'm going to try and make something out of this. You know, it was cheap as fuck. I'm like, sure. And so I kind of like weighed my options with like rebuilding an Evo motor. And these days, like rebuilding an Evo motor is expensive as shit. You might as well fucking twin cam it. Yeah. So there we go. So I twin cammed it.
So what your twin cam? I mean,
it's a 03.
So I don't know this very well. So you still have an Evo style tranny though in it, right?
It's an Evo primary and tranny in it. So I did it. So there's two ways that you can, or there's many ways you can skin this cat, but you know, a lot of guys do the whole drivetrain, they cut out the cross member and like, you know, do the Dynafoot pegs and all that stuff. And like, you know, I'm not so into this that like I'm spending that, you know, like I'm just a garage guy. I'm not like trying to keep up with everybody and like, oh, I'm going to fucking spend $20,000 on this bike out the gate. Like, it ain't me. So I'm going to like work with what I got. So, you know, going back to like San Francisco and Oakland, like if you go to like California choppers and you talk to those guys about the twin cam swap, what they talk about, you know, is like they did hundreds of them. I don't know if they did hundreds, but they did at least dozens of them with that Vulcan engineering plate. They do the adapter plate that adapts the hole pattern.
Yeah.
Over, so you have the twin cam 4 holes.
Yeah.
And it gives you the 2 holes that you mount your Evo trans to, right? It's like $100 plate. Fucking you slap it in there, dude. And that's it, and up to, I think, 05, the stock primary will bolt up. Okay. And then after that, they sell a ring that adapts that even. So if you want to use a later motor, you can do that.
So what year is that motor? That's
it's 03.
03 motor.
And
out of
it's out of a electric glide.
Okay. So you still need a bagger motor.
It's a bagger motor, and it's a built motor. It was pre-built before it came to me.
Nice.
It was someone's backup motor for a bike they had, and they wound up getting rid of that bike. So,
if you're looking for high-quality motorcycle lighting, then check out Custom Dynamics. It doesn't matter if your motorcycle has been around the block or it's fresh off the showroom floor. They offer a wide range of LED lighting options for various models, as well as custom applications. They have been in business for over 25 years and are committed to providing top-notch products at competitive prices. On my FXR chopper, I'm running one of their custom application LED taillight strips and their industry standard 5.75 LED headlight. And on my Lowrider ST, I have been running their Pro Beam Series LED turn signals, taillight, and headlight. You can check out their website at customdynamics.com to explore the available LED lighting options for your motorcycle. And don't forget to follow them on Instagram at Custom Dynamics. See, I knew there was another option to that, but man, like at the same time, like maybe this is like what you just said about throwing some money at it, but like I feel like you can find like those like a whole drivetrain, primary twin cam. And you probably, you have to cut that cross member out and whatnot. But I've seen them on our marketplace at Dallas, like $1,500 to $2,500.
Totally.
For everything. Yeah. And like a 2015.
Yeah.
So I'm like.
Yeah, I think it gets weirder when you get up into like the Rushmore era and like all the CAN bus stuff. I think it's funny. It's like,
that's what I have in mind is a CAN bus one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe.
So, I mean, I pulled all of it out to go carbureted and whatnot. But
right.
Like my motor was out of a 2015 Street Glide.
Okay.
Yeah.
Shit.
So.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a way to do it. And the other way to do it is like getting one of the fancy oil pans, Yeah. You get the oil pan that dodges the cross member, and then you can just use all your shit,
Yeah.
And that's a great way to do it too, But it's just like, for me, like looking at this and like trying to put this thing together, like on a budget, like I'm not trying to build a show bike for nobody. I'm doing this for myself.
It looks damn good.
I just want to build a fucking bike. Like it's for me. It's fun. So there it is. So, dude, but yeah, it came out good, and like the bike has like, it's got some pretty cool history that I don't know if I could really go into right now, but but it's like it's cool, So,
Get some more beer.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think the story behind the shovelhead's pretty badass. The '83 shovel. Mm-hmm. And so that was I guess we kind of skimmed over the fact that like what you actually do for a living now. How did you actually get into that though?
Okay. So I work in the film industry now. I do set construction. So I build the sets, I build props, I build, all that stuff. It could be, like full buildings. It could be just an interior of a room on a soundstage. It could be whatever.
Like I need to move this light over here, that kind of stuff.
No,
too?
It's like building the walls, like building the floors, building the ceilings, like everything, Like,
do you ever have to like go in and like remodel things in like existing structures?
Yes.
Yes.
And sometimes like we'll go in somewhere and a producer will say, or a director will be like, I want to like a plug here. And they want to just like plug this wall so it's all flat, and it's like, okay, cool. So we do it, And, we do location work, and we do work on stages and all that stuff. And, it's anything from like building like the sets themselves to like pieces within the set, like tables or furniture. Or whatever, so I, the way that I got into it was, I was doing the music stuff, and, I was doing screen printing in LA, so I moved to LA and I was screen printing there for a couple of years. And we went on, I think the last big tour that we went on, and I got back and the screen printing shop like sold everything. They were like, we're done.
Damn.
And like, we're going to make more money off this building just renting it out to somebody else than we are off this business, which is only because they had a record label in there. You know, we had a screen printing operation that was basically sustaining the record label. And so they had a bunch of people in the office of the record label, and the record industry is a fucking wreck. You know, like it doesn't make money anymore. You know, like I got to live through all of that, like watching like, you know, go from like, you know, people selling CDs and albums and all that stuff, and like, you know, like getting royalties and shit, to like when we kind of like started really coming up is when all that stuff, all the streaming stuff started popping up, and like all of a sudden like the record labels are trying to figure out how to make money. You know, like that whole like dinosaur like business plan is like out the fucking window, you know, like they're like, we don't know how to monetize this anymore. So, you know, that's what that company was. And so this was their like screen printing thing, printing merch for all their bands. And so they're selling the merch, but then they're also paying the salary of like 10 people in the office who like aren't really doing anything or making them money. You know, like they're getting these records made and they like release them, and then like it's just streaming and nobody's buying it, you know?
And it's signing up streams on like a Spotify or Pandora to justify like, you gotta be like Taylor Swift on there to make money and shit.
Yeah, you gotta have like hundreds of thousands or like millions of plays to like, I mean, I think that we have like hundreds of thousands of plays and we don't get shit, you know?
Yeah.
So, or, you know, like really the only way left to really get any money is like, it's called a sync. And what it is, it's like they take your music and they put it like in a TV show, right? So 15 seconds of your song in a TV show is more than you're ever going to make off that fucking record, you know? And so, you know, the publishing stuff is like, you know, the syncs are part of the, you know, publishing rights. So I have some of that.
Does it not make more sense just to kind of like self-promote and publish these days? If that's...
It does. You know, like there's a lot of like just tiny record labels doing stuff that, you know, I mean, it's just like, it kind of everything went back to like the punk rock way of releasing records. So it's like, okay, cool. Like, you know, like we'll help you pay for your cheap recording and then we'll split the profits 50-50. Like that's like what a lot of what happens now is, and that's what it used to be, just purely like punk shit that did that, you know?
Yeah.
You know, as opposed to like the record labels being like, you're going to get $1 a copy and sold, blah, blah, blah. Well, you know, meanwhile, they're making like $6 a copy or whatever the fuck, you know? And so it's like, you know, it's just like, it's all fucked up. The music industry fucking sucks. It's like, it's so fucking crazy now. Like, I don't even like know what to make of it. And I'm happy to not really be a part of it anymore, you know?
Yeah.
But as far as like how I got into like the building and stuff, so I got back from that tour, screen printing shop was gone. I was like, oh fuck. And so I had this buddy who was building recording studios, and he was a band buddy of mine. Our bands had toured together before, and he had moved to LA, and he was building these studios for like kind of like, some of it was in like people's homes and stuff, but it was like fucking big people like Diplo and shit like that. And like, you know, and so he was like getting like kind of busy with this stuff. And like, you know, I was like, by this point, you know, like I had like kind of like gotten like kind of crafty and could like make some stuff. And I had a couple saws and the drill and stuff. And like, you know, I was not a fucking construction worker by any means, but like, he was like, yeah, you can come work. Sure. And I kind of got put into this like trial by fire of like crazy, like compound finished carpentry. Which is like just crazy angles and all this shit. And we were doing all these control rooms that look like spaceships, you know? Oh, okay. And like really the modern recording studio, there's not like a fucking big drum room. It's like mainly a fancy control room and like a little vocal booth, maybe like a tiny other booth. And that's it, you know? I think, you know, I worked on like maybe 20 studios with him. And I think there was like 2 drum rooms out of all those. But, he had a couple like really like badass dudes that worked for him.
So when you record like that, do you have to record each instrument separately and put it together?
Yes and no. Like
you have just a different way.
You have to have the instruments isolated, right? And you can use those tracks, but generally you'll go back and redo like you know, you do it first to get the drums. That's the basis of everything. And then, you know, if the initial takes are good, sure, keep them. But if not, you know, you go back and you redo all the bass and you redo all the guitar, and then you go through and do all the vocals and all that shit. So, but you know, you need to have everything isolated. So you have a drum room where like you're getting a big acoustic sound out of those drums. And then, you know, you might have another, like a couple smaller rooms where those guitar amps are, you know, and they're all baffled apart from each other. And they have like directional mics that are kind of,
oh, that's cool. Yeah. I was always wondering about that. Yeah. Cause you know, like listening to people make, like my brother, when he was making some music with his band, it's like you could just see like, man, there's just something about the audio that doesn't feel as clean.
Right.
As like, I feel like maybe it's like the bass drums, or I mean the drums themselves are picking up some of the guitar audio, and it's kind of like crossing.
Yeah, it's
cross contamination.
They call it bleed.
Okay.
So you have the bleed over, and so you have in some recordings, like old punk and hardcore records, like that's like charming, like that's fucking killer. Like you want to hear like that, like nasty, like raw kind of sound, but it's these days, I mean, everything is like so like polished and triggered, and like you're doing all this like super high tech shit. You're not even hearing real drum sounds. The drummer's playing the shit, and there's like piezo triggers that are picking up and going into a module that has other drum sounds in it. It's like it's a whole. You're not even using the fucking mics.
Damn.
So it's the technology is fucking out of just super crazy now. Like when we were doing this shit like in the 90s, we had a 4-track recorder, right? And it had a fucking cassette on it, and it recorded 4 separate channels, so you could mix it. With
okay, yeah.
And like that was it, And you had your fucking mics, and you put them up in your jam room and fucking recorded practice or whatever. And you're like, we made a recording, no shit, But now it's just like the shit you do with like GarageBand and stuff, or Logic or whatever. It's
That's
like,
what I do with this podcast is use GarageBand.
Yeah, I mean, there's like fucking, like the amp modelers and all the mics and all the stuff, and like all the like guitar effects. I mean, it has like every fucking thing you could imagine in there. It's incredible, I've been messing with that stuff the last couple of years a little bit, just like making stuff on my own, and like it's fun, but it's just like there's a learning curve for me. Like I understand how the recording process works, and even the digital recording process, but as far as like the how to get the sounds and all that stuff, like that's just like totally like what like it's like it's cool, it's easy, but you just have to learn it,
And you mainly play the drums the whole time, right?
Yeah, I mean I'm a drummer, but like in my bands I like played a lot of like I wrote a lot of the music.
Okay.
Yeah, at least early on, I had towards the end I kind of like I hit some fucking issues, like I was partying super hard and kind of got a little fucking in the paint, and it was, my creative juices weren't flowing as much. So, which, I mean, it's funny to talk about that stuff and like how like, the craziness of like the music life and all that stuff, and like how motorcycles came into it and like really kind of like saved me a little bit, because I was like really on like a gnarly path, I was doing some fucking crazy shit, and like I got into bikes and I was like so into it, and like I didn't like riding like super fucked up, and like it was just like I was like I like this, I want to do this, I don't want to do that, like
that's
so
crazy. It kind of mellowed you out.
Mellowed me out, and then once I got into like really like working on the bikes and stuff, like it was just such a great fucking distraction, from all that shit I was getting myself into, like
nice.
It really helped me like pull away from that stuff and like just immerse myself in something new that I knew nothing about, So yeah,
that's fucking dope. Yeah, man. I feel like bikes, like for me, just it just became like, I think traveling on motorcycles. Like I've been like motorcycles were a job for like the first 10 years of my life.
Sure.
Maybe not 10 years, maybe first 8 years.
Okay.
And then it turned into like, I remember I was telling my wife, I was like, I had a house, not own it, but I just rented a house. I was with my son's mom, and my daughter from a previous relationship was living with me.
Yeah.
Well, my daughter was hitting the age where like she really needed to be around her mom. She was about to do some woman stuff that I wasn't quite equipped for.
Right.
And then me and the son's mom just fell apart. So literally one New Year's Eve, like that next week, I went from having 2 kids in the house and an old lady to just nobody. And so what I used to do was I would come home from work, and if I wasn't going to another shop to like airbrush a hood or some shit for somebody, like I would paint like canvases in the garage, and kind of was doing well. Started doing some shows, like some art shows, and would do a lot of live paintings at like car shows and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then when they left, like I didn't feel like I was. I hate to say the word stuck in the house, but I'm like, man, you know what? I could jump on that bike right now and just go ride around town. I don't have to answer to anybody. I don't have to, worry about my kid being home alone. Like I can just do that. And so that made me fall in love with motorcycles, having like actual freedom on the bike rather than, and I always wondered like, what would an art like the art path would have been like, but
Right.
I just fell head first into motorcycles, and this was literally 2011 was when that happened.
Yeah.
So I had like a Sportster as well.
Right.
I had a Nightster 07, and then
Those were fucking killer bikes. They were fast.
Yeah.
They were fun.
the next year I bought a fucking Road Glide,
There you go. There you
brand
go.
new one, and
That's awesome.
it was so it's just like I said, it just kind of was one of those deals, and the crazy thing is like a lot of the things I did in art was kind of what once I started kind of carving out my style of paint are just me taking some of the things I did in my art career and put it into the portraits on the helmets and stuff. And
Yeah.
a lot of people don't realize, like, I'm not saying that I was the first dude to put a fucking airbrush picture on a helmet, but
Yeah.
in this scene, this world, this culture that we're in now, like that's my flavor that I brought to the table.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's fucking cool. Hell
And
yeah.
because it was weird because anytime I get into something, I research the fuck out of it, and it's super easy to do that now since it's all online.
Yeah.
So when the first Simpson helmet I ever painted, which was my Samuel Jackson one, I went down the rabbit hole of Simpson's website, every painter that I knew that was in this game, and I'm not saying there wasn't, I didn't see anything out there
Right.
that had that flavor, and that's kind of why I went with it.
Yeah,
you know what
yeah.
I'm saying?
I mean,
So-
I think, you always had like kind of like the sport bike and like graphic helmets and stuff like that, but like nothing like that. Not at all.
Schultz was like out there, like he was one of the ones really carving, in my opinion, kind of carving the game with like the panel painted helmets, the flaked out stuff and
Sure.
stuff. And then you had like Valley Customs out there as well in California. There's a handful of people doing that, but
Right.
I brought the airbrush with
Right.
the flake and that stuff
Yeah,
to
yeah,
it.
yeah.
So it was kind of like
Fuck yeah.
that was my shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
that's killer.
But no, it's just, bikes kind of really hone me in, and then traveling on them, it just like I fell in love with that wanderlust of that over. Even though I'm not creating anything when I do this. It's not like I'm painting a canvas or something like that, but it's still just, it feeds me the same way that creating art did. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, totally.
So, but that's wild that like you picked up the more or less woodworking so quickly, because that was going to be one of the questions. Like, well, how do you go from like not being mechanically inclined?
Right.
Because a lot of the mechanically inclined thing is kind of like a muscle memory of being able to work with tools.
Right. And so I have always been like geometrically inclined.
Okay.
Like I'm good with like math and like numbers and angles and stuff like that. And so I was kind of like immediately like thrust into this like finish carpentry world. Like before framing or anything like that, it was just like, you're doing finish, we're doing molding, we're doing.
But I would
casing.
say that like your drumming and guitars and all that stuff, like you had a connection, eye-hand coordination
Right.
that is kind of what I'm leaning
Yeah.
towards, is that some people can put a ratchet in their hand and that motion is so unfamiliar.
Right.
That they're focusing on the movement of the ratchet rather than
Right.
the bolt that they're pulling out, right? Mm-hmm. And so when I think of mechanically inclined, I think of more of like the difference between being able to like ride a skateboard and like you're just imbalanced on it. You know what I mean?
Right. Totally. And I think that, you're totally right in that. And like, I did like take to it like pretty quickly, and like, pretty quickly I was like doing my own projects with this guy, you know, like within like months, he was like, cool, like set up this router table, make all this like custom molding, or like set up this and like make that. And like, I've seen guys in the time since, come into shops I've been a foreman at, and like, like these are guys who like should not be around tools. They're like, like this dude's like with a nail gun or with a stapler or whatever, and like they're holding this piece of wood and they're like looking like it's gonna bite them or something. Like like they don't look confident.
They're scared of the slap.
Totally. It's gonna be okay. People have been doing this shit for years, But
I get freaked out a little bit using air hammers. You ever use one of those?
Yeah.
Sometimes it just freaks me out.
Yeah. Big noise, big excitement, Yeah, there's a stapler called the corrugated stapler. It shoots like a staple that's like it's like a little miniature piece of like corrugated metal, and it's just solid. It's like this like piece, and you use it to mend like flat pieces of plywood together, or like whatever, and they make like some like cabinet like doors and rails and styles and stuff like that with it. And it's like this loud like gnarly thing, and like you're gonna cut your finger off with this thing, if you get your hand under it, but I love it. I'm super into it. So, I was doing the recording studios, and like the work was like super cool. Like we were doing like all this like super cool, like state of the art shit. And this dude is like landing these crazy jobs. He can like barely pay us once a month. You know, he's just like, you know, he's owed like all this money and like he can't pay us. And it's like, bro, like fucking, I gotta like pay my rent and shit. Like what the fuck, you know? And so, you know, and we're working like long hours and doing this stuff. And finally,
that is one of the bad things about like that industry.
Yeah.
Is like checks aren't like the same as like, hey, I built the exhaust, give me my money.
No.
It's like, oh, they got to send it through this company, and it's got to be a check written to this, and then he's get a check, and then he has to cut you a check. It's like,
right.
It's crazy how that.
I mean, he might be like, you know, he might have someone into him for like $200,000, you know, and fucking, I'm like, dude, you got to like get 50% up front or something.
Yeah,
like,
get a draw on
you know,
it or something.
you know, you're like maxing out your credit cards on materials, and you're not paying us. Like, what the fuck do you think is going to happen? You know?
Yeah.
And so finally, you know, I think he got it under control. But in the meantime, you know, I kind of got another opportunity to go work in this cabinet shop with this dude, and this dude was like a fucking wizard. And so we were doing, you know, these like super high end kitchens and stuff, and like that was super cool. Like it was like, you know, he had all these like killer tools and like all this like really nice stuff, and he had really like good habits, and like I learned a lot of really good shit from this guy, you know. And so one of the things we were doing heavily was like a lot of like veneers, like where you have like, you know, you might have a piece of like wood that's like particle board or MDF or something like that, and then you put a piece of white oak on it to make it look nice, right? And so we were doing a lot of veneers, a lot of like laminate kind of stuff. And you know, I got another call from somebody who was basically like, you know, I'm working on this like production thing, and they need someone to come with some laminate shops to come in and do some shit. And I was like, yeah, I do that, you know? And so I came in, and it's like this big union mill, and it was like fucking, I didn't know anything about it really. And I knew the industry was there and stuff, but I hadn't worked in the movies or anything. But, you know, I came in, and, you know, pretty quickly, like they figured out that I could do this stuff, and like not, you know, there's dudes in the industry certainly who can do it, but like I was like used to like doing it like quick, like production style, like fucking, I'm doing like 8 cabinet doors at a time, and like, you know, all the edges and everything like super fast and like super clean. And they liked that. Yeah. And so these guys started calling me more, and I wound up, you know, and that, you know, that went from like, you know, immediately they're like, oh, you're going to get paid this. I'm like, that's like double what I make in the real world doing a fucking bunch of garbage for fucking movies, you know? Yeah. And so I was intrigued, you know, I'm like, this is cool, you know? And so I you know, I kind of continued down that path and working for some of those guys, doing commercials and doing, you know, some like crazy builds for events and stuff like that. And worked at a couple different shops, and, that were all in that world. And I wound up at this one shop that, you know, was
so these like shops that are kind of like, I don't know if the word's licensed, but through, I guess, the union, they're part of like different types of projects.
Some of them are, and some of them aren't, you know. I mean, it's like, you know, one of the shops was like, you know, like this is a union facility, and the guy who owned it was the union art director, and like, you know, it was like everything was union there, you know. Yeah. But I wasn't in the union yet, and like in LA, that union is like very gatekeepy. It's like very like, who's your cousin, like who's your uncle, like you ain't getting in. And the way that you get in that union is, you know, you work 30 days in a year, and then you're eligible to join the union, you know. And it's a super expensive initiation. I think it's like $7,000. It was at the time, at least. It's probably more now. And you know, you got your dues and all that stuff, and what would happen is you would get on a fucking show, and you would work 28 days, and they put you on a fucking no-call list because they don't want you getting in. Wow. And they just fucking just ghost on you, and you're just like, fuck. I mean, you get paid and stuff, but they just didn't want you getting in. Oh, so I think it was very much like that until COVID, you know. And finally, a bunch of the old guard, a bunch of dudes didn't want to come back. They didn't want to wear masks. They didn't want to do whatever, and they're like, we're done. And they finally fucking retired, you know. Yeah. And now it's opened up a little bit out there, but yeah, but you know, I wound up at the shop. It was a non-union shop, and we were doing like all these like big events, like, you know, we're doing like the Grammys and fucking like all the shit at Coachella, and all like, you know, we did like a bunch of different like Call of Duty like reveal events and stuff that were like huge fucking things. They're like, you know, just gigantic fucking builds. And these guys made me the general foreman of the whole thing.
Damn.
You know, like I was like, you know, I was just building and stuff, and they could tell I was like organized and had a good head for all the stuff they were doing. And they're like, you want to be the foreman? I was like, okay, I guess. And so, you know, I was like still building and stuff. And like, you know, this was like during one of the Call of Duty jobs. And I was building all these like crazy, like fucked up, like trapezoid walls or whatever that got some crazy grid through them or whatever. So I'm building like 20 of these things. They're like 14 feet tall. And then like I build one, then like make a round. And, you know, I think we had like, we were doing 24-hour shifts, or we were doing day crew and night crew. And so I had like 70 guys on the day crew, and the night guy had like 45 guys at night. Just like fucking building, like, you know, I think we took it all down like fucking 15 semis or something like that to SpaceX. Did it down there.
Dude, that's crazy.
Yeah. So that was my first foreman gig, and they came up to me and they're like, hey, you know, you can't like fucking build and do this foreman job, right? Like, you have to stop building. I'm like, well, someone's got to build it. And like, you have to find the guy to build it. I'm like, okay. And so I started to figure out that the foreman thing, at least in that capacity, was like, you know, it was like finding the right guy to do the thing. You know, like, cool, this is the guy who can build these walls. Fucking, you're going to do this. You know, this is the guy who does the cabinets. This is the guy who just fucking loads, this is the guy who loads the truck, you know, like, you know, and you kind of
delegating some kind of like,
totally,
you know. And
so I got good at that. And like, you know, I did that gig in LA for like 5 years, you know, until we moved here. And, it was a great gig. I loved it. It was awesome. You know, we did all sorts of fucking fucked up shit, you know?
So I know, you know, we don't have to say it on here, but like you met your wife at the chopper party. But how, like you said, she was working in the film industry too. Like, was that just coincidence or? No. So she was, you know, she was bartending and stuff when I met her. And, you know, she had customers, like regulars who would come into her bar shifts who were all film people. And she became buddies with them. And finally they started bringing her on to some of the stuff they were doing. So she, you know, she was coming in, she'd be like a buyer on a commercial, like buying all the props and stuff, or, you know, she did some paint work. She was doing scenic stuff, like on a couple things. And, you know, she wound up working for this like production designer on this show that was based out of here, out of Albuquerque. And that's like how the whole connection to us moving out here started, you know, but no, you know, I was like doing that stuff already, and she kind of got into it shortly after, and was, you know, she was doing the mirrors, she was doing some like show work and stuff, and kind of like still had a couple bar shifts, and she like fucking hated working at the bar. Like when she stopped working at the bar, I was so stoked, because she was just complaining about it. She's just like, I hate the fucking bar. And I'm just like, quit. She's like, I can't. I'm like, well, I can find something else to do, you know? So, you know, I tried to encourage her to get into something that she liked, you know, and eventually she did. So nice. So, because I mean, the bar scene will fucking eat you up, you know? And it's like, you know, we were on opposite schedules, you know? I was getting up at fucking 5 a.m, and she was going to work at 5 p.m, you know? And there's a part of me that like would love to own like a dive bar kind of thing, but not necessarily like so I can drink in it all day, just the atmosphere. Like I like creating atmosphere. You know what I mean? I mean, that's I don't know that I'd want to have like, I'd like to have more of like a daytime, like mountain destination bar. Okay. You know what I mean? Yeah, like close at 10. Like close at fucking like bar. You know, like 8 on the weekdays and 10 on the weekends or something like that. Like that sounds cool, but like I don't want some fucking 3 a.m. fucking situation. Ever again. I mean, I've lived that life. I'm done. You know. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, I don't think that it would be something that I would be on boots on the ground with, but it'd be cool to have something like that. So I don't know, just for me, but. I'm also thinking of all the bars that I've hung out in that are in like more the Midwest that kind of have like it still got their rough and tough things going on, but it just seems like a different vibe than like, totally. You know, the bars that I have in Dallas where they're on the outskirts of town and people are just ready to go fucking buck wild every night they come to them. It's not like the neighborhood kind of, No. Yeah. There's like, you know, I feel like, you know, when I was in the Bay Area, like in Oakland, San Francisco, there was definitely a lot of like cool little like spots that were just like the daily spot. That's kind of what I'm thinking of. I'm not thinking of like the you know, the fucking no, like raging club. We got karaoke night. Like I ain't doing it. I'm like a quiet, mellow bar where people come and just, you know. I had a bar like that in LA. Like the last 5 years we were in LA, I was in Arcadia, which is kind of like East Pasadena, it's the next town east of Pasadena. Yeah. And there's this little bar I found, and they had like,
I mean, it was like stepping into like Indiana or something. It was
Nice.
like fucking like $3 beers, like $5.25 burger and fries, like
yeah.
that were like the best burger in town. It was fucking awesome. And like, I had a couple friends who came out and hung out with me there, but like once we moved out there, I didn't really like go to like Hollywood or Silver Lake or any of that shit anymore. I was kind of like over it, I was like kind of well on my way to being over it. Like by the time we moved out there, and once I found a cool little spot there that I could like walk to or like ride my bike over there, fucking hang out and have a couple beers, like mindlessly watch whatever sports game they have on TV, like
Look, the ball goes back and forth.
Sports ball. Fucking, I was just like, I was, they'd have like the Dodgers on or something, and like I'd just be like, yeah, cool. It's like super relaxing to watch that,
Yeah. I mean, I can get into sports every once in a while. Like I can watch like a Super Bowl or something, but I can't get into the like keeping up with it.
No.
To know what's going on, and I'm kind of like a Cliff Notes sports watcher.
Yeah.
Because I played sports in high school, so it's like I have a connection to it to understand the different sports, but like I don't know, like I just kind of peripheral, like get an Instagram update. Oh, the Mavericks won tonight. Oh, the Cowboys won today. I'm like, cool.
Yeah. Right on.
Whatever.
Go town.
Go.
That's cool. I don't
Go
know. Like,
town.
yeah. I just like, I could give a shit about the sports, and like in New Mexico, there's not any sports. Like there's so fucking, so, there's like, my mom is, she lives in Wildwood, New Jersey. And they were like in North Philly, and they're like just crazy fucking Eagles fans. And they're like, they were here like a year ago or something like that visiting, and they're like, we got to go watch the Eagles game. Can we watch it on your TV? I'm like, no, I don't have cable. I don't watch it. Like no. I was like, well, we got to go to a sports bar. I'm like, fuck, like in Albuquerque, I don't know. We'll figure it out, And so I found the sports bar like up the street, pretty close to where we had dinner tonight. And I mean, it's like full, like, 40 TVs, like the whole fucking thing. And it's like, I was like, what's this going to be like, And it was like, what it was just little sections. Like there was like, it seemed like it was pretty Packers heavy.
Yeah.
There was a bunch of Packers guys there. And then like, there was some other people watching some of the other games, and they'd all kind of like click up together and like watching. It'll be like 4 or 5 people like watching each like game or whatever.
Yeah.
And so we were watching the Eagles game on some TV with like 2 other guys, and I was like, yeah, okay, you guys done?
We'll go wait in the car.
Yeah, no, it was cool. I fucking had some beers and ate some fries and shit. It was fine.
Yeah.
And I could watch it.
Since you moved here, like, what was the scene like as far as like what you were a part of motorcycle wise? And like, I mean, you were working a lot in LA. Like, you kind of told me like the kind of schedule you were keeping. Yeah.
I mean, so for me, it was like, I was more friends with like more like chopper guys than I was like FXR and Dyna guys. Mm-hmm. I knew a bunch of chopper guys, and they all gave me a bunch of shit for having an FXR, but I like my FXR, like it just like, to me, it was a practical way of fucking getting around town, and like I was in love with the fucking thing, I wanted a chopper, but I was just like, someday, and I was still broke, I was still doing the music stuff and all that, and like I was just like, and so most of the guys I knew were like chopper guys, and they were very much part of that scene. I knew a couple FXR guys here and there, but like, not too many. It was far and away more chopper dudes. So
I know like a group of dudes over in the Burbank area that like, what's his name? Jack, Cooksey or whatever. What was his name? Fuck.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. The guy who was selling Dynas and all that. Yeah.
They had that whole little garage over there right by the airport in Burbank.
Right.
And fucking just full of sick ass FXRs.
I don't know if I ever saw that guy out anywhere, but he maybe he was doing stuff, and then I was on the other side of town by that point. I think, I was living over in Arcadia, and like kind of, I moved to Arcadia in like 2015.
Okay.
So I think that like, by that point, I was like hanging out over there a lot more. I was pretty over like the like central LA scene a little bit. I wasn't. It was just like, it was just. I don't know. I was more at that point more into doing my own thing.
Yeah.
I was like, kind of getting out of like, the tail end of the music stuff I was doing, and getting more into like writing like by myself. And for me, like writing is very much like a solitary thing. Like it's not like a social thing at all. And like, I kind of like taught myself fucking everything, you know. Like,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
had help from some friends and stuff, but like overall, like, you know, for me, it was like, you know, like I did this thing, I put this thing together, I'm gonna fucking go ride it by myself and have a great time, you know, and I did. And that's kind of like where I was coming from with it, you know. I wasn't like, you know, I went to some of the chopper shows and like parties and stuff, and I go down to Born Free and stuff, but like, you know, and it was sick. I'd go down and see all those amazing bikes and shit, and it was awesome. And I'd hang out for 4 hours and bail. I'm like, cool, I'm done, you know. And I go ride somewhere by myself.
Yeah.
So yeah. So that's the kind of like the scene that I was like a part of there, I guess, you know.
Yeah, it's kind of like I've been trying to like do a deep dive like mentally or just like more, I guess, on a philosophical kind of kick of scenes changing and, you know, like I wouldn't say falling out, but just like naturally people tend to like lose interest in things.
Sure.
Right. So what I've been trying to say to like some of the homies that come to our bike night and stuff, I was like, look, right now, if you dig this, like really dig it, because no matter what, it's not going to be like this forever.
Right.
No matter how much you try, like you can't make everybody else try. So if you're really fucking like digging on the fact that all these people are showing up and you get to be a part of this moment right now, fucking like know that it's not going to last forever.
Yeah.
It's right now. Fucking live right now with it, right? Because
Totally.
all those scenes change. Everything changes.
Everything changes.
Yeah.
The next old lady you have is going to tell you to sell your bike, or the kid you have, you're going to sell the bike, or whatever it is.
Yeah. Or you get a
Things
job
come and go.
opportunity and you leave, and
Yeah.
now you don't get to be a part of that every day. Or just,
Yeah.
you know, dude gets into barbecuing. He doesn't have time
Totally.
to ride anymore.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. You're a beard guy now. Whatever. You know. But you know, fucking yeah, I totally dig that, and like, you know, I have found that this has been such like I've just had such a massive pull to it all this time, and it isn't, you know, the scene has never really like mattered to me.
Yeah.
You know, like it's my relationship with it that's important. You know,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I could give a fuck what anyone else is doing. You know.
Yeah,
And,
that's a good thing to do. I mean, that's a good way to like live through it, because you have no expectations of other people, which is literally the downfall of your happiness when you put it into other people's hands. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
So like I'm not worried about what anyone else thinks. You know.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, with these bikes, like, you know, none of these bikes, like I told you, none of these bikes cost more than $5,000.
Yeah.
You know, and like I've done what I've done to them, and I'm very happy with them just how they are. They are not show-stopping bikes. They are not anything special, but I fucking love them. You know. So
yeah, they're all rad though. Like
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind having either one of them in my garage.
yeah. Thank you.
If the market does get worse and you get to hurting, let me know about that 83.
All right. I will. But yeah. No, I like.
So
that
yeah,
bike.
the 83 story.
Okay, so the
Yeah.
83 story. So we were talking about the film thing, and so yeah, so I'm doing all this stuff in LA. We wind up moving to New Mexico. You know, she had a connection to some film stuff out here. We were both kind of fed up with LA. We wound up out here in 2021. So we've been here for almost 3 years now, and like, you know, there's a union out here. Film stuff exists out here on a much smaller scale, but it does exist.
Yeah.
And you know, it's like full scale, like big shows, Amazon shows, Netflix shows. It's all out here, you know? And so, you know, we pretty quickly, because we're coming from LA with the LA skill set, they were like quick to like kind of like push us through like the union shit and get us in.
Yeah.
You know, usually you have to like be a resident for like a year before you can even be considered to get on the waiting list and all this. And it's like, I think we moved here in April of 21, and I was formanning a show in like June of 21.
Damn.
You know, like they
Yeah.
fucking were like, oh, here you go. You want to work? Here
Yeah,
you go.
we need
Yeah.
shit to work here.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, I did a couple shows as a construction foreman, and one of the shows that I was on, and a show is like, in movie speak, it's anything. It's a TV show, it's a movie, it's a commercial, it's a music video, it's a show. Everything is a show. So we were, you know, I did this movie, and we were up at the old Tom Ford Ranch, which is like this big, like standing, like movie Western town. It's like this huge fucking thing. They've done a bunch of stuff there. And there's this big cantina that we were doing this big bar scene. And the cantina was like super, you know, like when they build this stuff for the movies, it's not built for real, you know? it's fucking garbage.
Yeah.
Right. So like the roof wasn't real. The thing has been there for like 5 or 6 years since whatever show it was built for. But, you know, it was thrashed and someone had been storing a bunch of shit in there. The floor was caved in. And so, you know, we had people clear it out. We redid the floors. We worked on the roof. We did all this. We built a bar in there and stuff. And they did this bar scene. And so part of the bar scene is like this girl like comes in and then she comes outside all mad and she kicks over all these bikes out front. Yeah. It's a fucking stunt scene, right? With all these bikes. And so, you know, we're wrapping up our build on the thing and they start showing up with like all the cars and bikes and stuff. And this fucking, you know, movie steak bed shows up with like all these fucking bikes just dumped in the back. Nothing is strapped down. It's just fucking like
laying back there. Fuck.
And I see this FXRT fairing like in the back of that truck. I'm just like, what the fuck is that? And so,
how fucking dare you?
Right? I was like, what the fuck? And so I go over and I talk to the driver. I'm like, whose bikes are these? And like, what's the deal? Did you guys buy them? Are you renting them? He's like, oh, you know. And so every show's got like a car guy who like runs all the car stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I got in touch with him. I'm like, what's with the bikes? You know, like, how do I get you to not do this stunt with this bike? You know, or it's going to get kicked over. And it's like, I go, you know, I look at the bike once they, unloaded, and it's like a 83, you know, FXRT shovelhead, black and gold, fucking no cracks. Fucking looks like it hasn't been registered since 1992. You know, that probably hasn't run since then. And, but it's all there and it's all original. I'm just like, dude, like, what's up? Like, what do you got to have for it? Like, he's like, well, you know, like, I like to like trade and stuff. I don't really want to sell it. I'm like, well, where'd you get it? And he's like, well, I got it, you know, I bought it on, you know, a lot. It was like this fucking, all these bikes in this barn down in Carlsbad, New Mexico. And like, you know, like I got this Gold Wing and a couple Nortons and like there was a Gold Wing like laying on it in the truck. I was just like, dude, like, what are you doing? And, but you know, he didn't fucking know. He doesn't fucking care. So, he winds up like not really, he's kind of being like whatever about it. I'm like, fuck, you know. And so, you know, I call him again. I'm like, you know, just like give me a number, like just like, you know, let me know what I can do. And he's like, well, you know, I like to trade, like what do you got? I was like, okay. And so at that point, you know, the Mackie motor that I pulled out of this bike, I built a chopper with it. Yeah. And so I built, you know, this is my one chopper I've had. It was like I got this like Craft Tech frame, just like stock rake, stock width, stock everything, and fucking built this like 4-over chopper. And it was cool, you know, and it was fast. It was like, you know, fucking Mackie Evo. Yeah. And it was, you know, even if it was tired, it was a light bike. So it was like still felt fast, you know, dual disc wide glide front end and like, you know, kind of like 80s club style chopper, you know? Yeah. So, it was cool. And so I sent him pictures of that and like, you know, everything else I had, like, I wasn't going to give him any of these bikes for that bike, you know, but I just want to see what he said. And so he's like, oh, the chopper. I'm like, okay, like, I'm interested. Like, what do you want to do? He's like, well, you know, like I'd like to see it and blah, blah, blah. And like, I'm super busy and I was super busy too. And like, it was like, you know, let's keep in touch. And so we kind of like, you know, I'd kind of check in on him like every like couple weeks. And I kind of just gave up on it. Like, dude, this guy's not going to let this thing go. Like, he doesn't give a fuck. And, you know, he's got this lot with like, you know, 300 cars on it that he owns, like limos and fire trucks and like anything you can imagine. Yeah. This is just another piece of that in the corner.
Yeah. So dust. For him, like, what is $3,000, $4,000, $5,000?
He doesn't give a fuck, you know? So I'm on this other show. That show's over. And he calls me. So, Scott, I'm like, what's up, dude? He's all fucking jazzed. I'm like, what's up, man? And I was like super busy and kind of like short with him. I'm like, what do you need? Like, he's like, all right, the chopper. I'm like, what about it? He's like, well, I shopped it to the show and they like have to have it. And so I sent him pictures into it, and you know, I had sent him pictures of it, and then you know, he had showed those pictures to some like director or production designer or somebody, and they were like, oh yeah, we want that. Get it. And paint it Captain America and like that whole thing. I was just like, you know, that's what they wanted. And so he had to have it like tomorrow. Like, I need it tomorrow. I'm like, all right, well, you still got the bike I want? He's like, oh yeah. I'm like, fucking bring it over. And so like a half hour, you know, like I was working in town. So I was like, I'm going to go home for lunch, fucking have your Teamster fucking bring me the bike and I'll load him up with the chopper. Yeah. Done and done. And that's what happened.
Damn, that's fucking cool.
You know,
that's kind of like, it's crazy. It's like a barn find, but it's kind of a different type of barn find.
Yeah, totally.
It's a survivor.
And it would have just sat, and it just makes me wonder, like, how many more bikes like that are just sitting in.
Oh yeah,
like,
that's
like
exactly
that,
what I was thinking too.
It's just
like how many more bikes are there out there that. That's why I keep thinking, like, when it comes to this FXR stuff, that like, it might be harder to find certain ones, but they're stuffed in like storage bins here and there. Or some dude, some old man gave it to his son and he never rode it, and it's like there's that shit's everywhere. It's
totally.
You just got to be out there looking for it.
I'd love to know what the story was with this bike, because you open up that right clamshell bag and there's like a Golf oil change sticker. It's stuck inside the bag with like all the oil changes. So getting done at some Gulf gas station.
Wow.
From like the late 80s into like, I think the last oil change was like December 92. Right. And it says like, whatever, 20,000 something miles. And then the odometer on the bike is like 100 miles later.
Damn.
It's just like frozen in time, like 1992. Like, that's pretty cool.
I wonder if like the dude died or maybe.
Who knows, So, I went through it and, it had like the butterfly carb on it. And it's like, I was like, I'm going to try and keep it all original and like all that. And like, I pulled the butterfly apart and like, I tried to like pull the jet. It just exploded into dust. It was just like, it's like so corroded and fucked. And so like anything rubber on the bike was fucked. And so I had to go through and do the motor mounts and fucking all the rubber, anything.
Do people ever put Mikunis on like the shovel heads?
I think so.
Yeah, I just never really noticed it. I've been trying to look for that because that's like my jam. Like I love Mikunis.
I like Mikunis too, and I would like to try one on here. That's a CV. Mm-hmm. I put a CV on it, and I've had a couple like my chopper buddies say that CVs run great on shovel heads. Okay, they're like and really like they love SNSs on shovel heads. I fucking hate SNS carbs. Like I love their motors and everything else, but I do not like those carbs. Yeah, and I know that everyone's like, well, they're so easy. Why don't you like it? And I don't know. Like every bike I've ever like rode that had one, I don't like the response. I think it runs like shit. Yeah, like it doesn't feel like I've been running Mikunis for fucking years now, and like I'm just so used to how like responsive they are that when anything else just feels like garbage. And
like tuning them, like just like the little dial in here and there, like when it's doing certain things, like I know how to like solve it real quick. Totally, you know what I mean? Totally.
Like it's like, yes, there's more moving parts, but like once you learn them, it's like it's really easy. So yeah, I'm a big fan of the Mikuni. I also do like CVs. I've
had one with a CV that I just kind of like turned it on and ran it, but I don't know much about them. That's another thing I got to learn. Like I really want to dive into like knowing how to pull apart a carb, jet them, all that shit, which I know it's not complicated, but
it's easy. You just got to do it a couple times, learn to get your float angle right and all that shit, and fucking accelerator pump. I think a lot of people like kind of overlook the accelerator pump, like adjustments and stuff, and they just kind of slap it back together with the jets and think it's going to do it, and it's like you got to like dial that into, and make sure it's like real clean and moving nice and stuff, and that kind of but I like that shit, and I really enjoy like finding like a swap meet like Mikuni that's like fucking roached and like bringing it back to life, because like you can clean them up really fucking nice, and like they're great. They're awesome. So
that's not a bad idea. Like because I really want like a blacked out one or like take one apart and just like learn how to rebuild them and like see if I can put it back together. Get some nicer nuts and bolts on it and shit like that. See, all this tinkering stuff, it's like I'm so drawn to it right now. I don't know why. Like
it's like hands-on shit. It's cool, man. Like it's like a great I don't know if it's an escape, but it's just to me it's a great way to spend my time, and it's like for me it's like, I do my work and like, I do all this like fucking movie shit, like this stuff, I got a lift in here, I got all my tools and stuff. Like this is how I relax. You know what I mean? Like this is like, I have no aspiration to be in the industry, to have a shop. People are like, oh, you should have a motorcycle shop. It's like, no, I shouldn't. I don't fucking want that. Like that, what a fucking thankless fucking job that is. Like
I always think about like I think Jason Weber said it on like that 6 Over documentary a long time ago, where it's kind of like the backwards of what everybody tells themselves about starting a shop. He goes, I want to work at a place I fucking hate.
Right.
So when I get off work, I can go do the thing I fucking love.
Right.
And the way he said it in that documentary was like, makes sense.
Right.
It's like, most people are saying like, oh, I want to do what I love all day long. But
Right.
But then it becomes like the thing you hate after a while.
Totally.
You know what I mean? So like the balance, it's kind of like we were talking about with the traveling and the rock star shit. It's like the highs are so high that the lows got to match the highs. You know, it's like
100%.
the waves don't like, you don't have highs and then like little lows. It's like the waves go both directions, up and down, right?
Yeah.
And same thing with like owning the shop and working in the industry. It's like the highs are fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Lows suck, dude.
I know all about it. I've got friends who have their own little shops and friends who've worked at big shops and friends who've worked at the dealership, and like none of it sounds very fucking glamorous. It sounds like, I mean, they are real fucking saints for even trying, you know?
Yeah.
But like for me, like this shit, like, you know, like I love my parts stash. I love fucking working on these bikes at my own pace. I love helping my friends out with their bike if they need fucking help or whatever. But like, you know, like for me, it's like, this is like, you know, it's fucking how I chill, you know?
Yeah.
So as opposed to fucking the shit I used to do, fucking getting all fucking crazy and being up till fucking sunrise and shit. Like now I'm like, cool, I can fucking do this and fucking hang out in here and listen to music and drink a couple beers and take it easy and go to bed at midnight, you know? So.
Is there any type of bike right now that's like really got your eye, or like a type of build or a type of?
I'd really like another Dyna. So
what setup?
I think I'd like to get like one of the like 96-inch 6-speeds, you know, like one of like the kind of like
like a 07 or some shit,
like a 08, 09. Okay, you know, like I just feel like I've heard a lot of people say that's a really like good platform. It's just a good motor, you know, and like kind of when they went to 103s, it kind of fucking, there was a bunch of fucking shit that happened and like it kind of got shitty. I don't know for sure, you know, like I had a Dyna, I built it frame up, and it was this is a good story. It was a fucking Sons of Anarchy stunt bike, right? And so these guys I know, these chopper guys in LA, they all worked on the show, right? And when the show ended, all these people got all these parts and bikes and shit, right? And my buddy Austin with the FXRP wound up with the twin cam motor. We twin cammed his FXRP, because you know his motor was fucking toast. You know, he was probably near 100,000 miles on that motor when he fucking twin cammed it with the Vulcan plate, just fucking super dirt style. We were not trying to impress anybody. We were trying to keep these bikes on the fucking road, you know? Yeah. And so it's like, we're just as grimy as you can get, you know? And so you fucking did that, and the fucking bike's still on the road with that motor, you know, today. I just saw it a couple months ago in fucking Monument Valley, you know? Nice. But, you know, so these guys all worked on the show, right? And so he got that motor, and then a couple months later, someone called him and was like, hey, you want this frame? We got the frame with the title. And these guys are, you know, they all have knuckleheads and shit. They don't fucking care about a fucking 05 Dyna frame, you know? Yeah. And so he's like, they asked me if I want the frame. I'm like, I don't want it. I'm like, I want it. Fucking, so I went over and got it, and it was a fucking frame, kickstand, electrical panel, you know, title, clean title. I'm like, okay. So, you know, I fucking sat on that for like a year or two. And I was working like fucking crazy. I didn't have time to think about it. But I was like, oh, it'd be cool to like, you know, I thought maybe I would like cut the neck off and use the title for like a chopper or something like that, you know, just do something with it. And so, you know, I was actually I used to go to the Long Beach swap a lot. Yeah. If you have the chance, you should go, because it's like,
I want to do that in the Davenport one.
Yeah. I mean, Long Beach is like, it's a monthly, Davenport's like a whole nother level, but Long Beach is like a monthly swap, and it's like, it's huge, you know, it's fucking, it's like, you know, it takes hours to walk through the fucking thing, you know? And so, you know, I would go pretty regularly, and I knew a bunch of the guys who, you know, a bunch of my friends would sell there and whatever. So, you know, I was kind of like, you know, I had a little bit of chopper fever at the time. Like, I want to like fucking do this thing. I got some money in my pocket. I'm going to fucking buy something. I'm going to buy a frame or a roller or fucking just something to get this something going. And I still had the Dyna frame, right? And so I'm like talking to these dudes, and they're telling me like what to look for and like what motor and blah, blah, blah. And they're like smoking this like weed pen with me and shit. I'm all high, and it's like 10 in the morning or whatever. And I walk like 50 feet, and I see this blacked out fucking FXDX drivetrain. The whole thing all bolted together. Damn. Right? Fucking just came out of a bike, and it's like the primary, the starter, fucking clutch cable, the clutch perch still on it. Like, it was just like there it is. You
Can't
know?
beat that, yeah.
And so I'm like looking at this thing, and I start talking to the dude, and he's some kind of like tweaky looking dude. I'm like, what's up with your motor, bro? And he's like, $700. I'm just like, and I'm like all high. I'm like, fuck. I'm like, should I do it? Like, this will drop right into that fucking Dynaframe. Like, when I got a project. And I'm like, okay. And so I fucking do it, right? So I buy the drivetrain and got it on a furniture dolly. I'm like rolling it out. I think I had the band van with me. I had the intention of like buying something, getting some sort of project started that day, you know? And so I had the band's van. And I'm like rolling it on the furniture dolly, like over to the van, and the fucking chopper just like, what are you doing? What did you buy that for? Like, you're supposed to be buying a fucking rigid frame or something. They're all fucking bitching me out, like, you know, like not like completely, but you know,
giving you a hard time.
Giving you a hard time about it. So I started the Dyna project, you know, and so I got it home and fucking, you know, I quickly started like kind of getting like, you know, I had like so much FXR like takeoff parts at that point, like. I had you know, I had wheels, I had front end, I had pretty much like almost everything I needed to like put together the Dyna roller, you know. But you know, you need that motor to make the roller because it goes into the fucking trans. You know, the swing arm goes in the trans. So, right?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. And so finally I got all that, and fucking, you know, a couple months later I fucking had myself a roller, and like. You know, I was still like working like crazy, and I think that like probably I was stacking parts for it until like, you know, into 2020, and COVID hit, and finally I had time to open all these fucking boxes that I had coming from everywhere. I'm like, I don't even know what I bought. Like, let's see what's here, you know? And so I had a couple of fucking weeks off of work and start fucking, and this roller was already on the lift, but I was like kind of at a standstill. I was so busy. I didn't have fucking time. You know, we were doing the Grammys and fucking this and that. And like, I was just like, I don't have time. So finally I get to fucking dive into this project. I think like 2 weeks later it was up and running, you know?
Oh shit.
Like I had like all the shit, you know, and then, you know, I made some tweaks on it and did a bunch of powder coat and fucking like had some paint done and stuff, and like fucking like it was cool. And I rode it for like a fucking year, and it was great.
Nice.
Like I loved it.
I like those. I like '05 and down Dynas.
Yeah, and that's what
preferably a carbureted, so like '03, right? Or '04 was still. I think '04 was the first year of carburation or fuel injection.
I think it was still an option, you know, like so the motor I had came out of a 99 FXDX.
Okay, yeah.
And so I did a Mikuni on it and stuff. It was an 05 frame, and there is some weird shit between like, you know, I think it is 99 to 03 that's carbureted because they changed the electrical panel to this like plastic panel for 04, 05. And I remember I had some like fuckery with like trying to like figure out like, you know, the frame actually didn't have bosses to put the old school like metal box on it. So I had to like do some weird shit.
Doing the FXR chop and making that wire harness, you know what I mean? Not that I did it all myself, but like Corey was kind of like showing me. He did kind of the initial loom of everything. Mm-hmm. But now that I understand it, like I want to do all my own wire. Like that shit is like therapeutic almost. Running the wires and like
you did it from scratch.
Getting getting rid of all the shit that you. Yeah, I mean, it'd be nice to have turn signals, things like that. And I understand how to put those on now. Right. But, like, it's cool to, like, not need it or not do it or just make it to where there's no wires going in the handlebars. And, you know, I mean, obviously there's a, you know, with the ignition system that I have, it has its own wire harness. So that's a separate situation. Yeah. But the other ignition system I was going to use, you had to make your own harness on that too, and I actually did, and it's easy. Yeah, I'll take one. I know that like guys like the old school guys who I've talked to about like doing the twin cam swap, they're like, oh, you know, like fuck doing all that, just do the Vulcan plate and get a NAMS, like make your own harness thing and plug it into an ignition module and you're done. You know, and it's like that's kind of it. Am I not there? No, just making sure you're okay. As long as it's pointed at your mouth, it'll catch you.
Okay. But you know, the way that I've done it is with a stock harness. You know, like this FXR has like a O2 FXDX harness on it, and it's kind of 10 pounds of shit in a 5-pound bag that I've like learned how to like.
Prune it a little bit.
Yeah, you prune it back a little bit and just keep what you need. And like, you know, I think that I ran into like issues when I was doing that dyno where like, you know, I was running into shit with like the bank angle sensor and like all this like dumb shit. Like the bike will not start without this fucking thing or like whatever the fuck. And it was like just learning like the tricks on like how to like short those things out on each other so you don't need them and like that kind of stuff. And like, you know, now I know how to fucking get rid of like the TSSM and like all that shit. And like, so you can use the bulk of like it's probably easier just to start from scratch and just build the harness, you know. But for me, not really like having anyone to show me how to do it. I'm just like, well, I got this. I know it will make the bike run if I fucking put it on there. And so how do I fucking keep what I need and lose what I don't need, you know? So that's kind of what I did, which is a little backwards, but it's how I had to do it.
It's ironic that like as simple and as fun as the wiring was on the bike, that ended up being the problem that had me, you know, sitting in this garage a couple months ago.
It's the magic of FXRs.
Yeah. But wait, there's more.
But wait, it's going to be electric.
I've always had primary issues.
Really? Yeah.
Well, honestly, I've had primary issues on every time I start like a bike, go into like the first big wheel I ever built, right? Riding it across country, I have a primary issue where, what happened? So everybody told me to go with the Screaming Eagle twin cam. It was a 2019 or it was a 2012, and then they had the old school, the older style primary tensioners, and there was like you got to get the Screaming Eagle one that like locks into place. So I ordered it, and it either slipped out of place or I didn't have it in the right place at some point. And by the time I got to Phoenix from Dallas, it was just like loud.
Yeah.
To the point where like, I'm like, dude, this don't sound good. And it's weird, right? Every time I'm on a bike trip, it does this. It gets me somewhere. Fine.
Right.
I go party because I'm like, it's fucking dialed.
Yeah.
Next morning, reality.
Right.
Right. So the next morning we wake up in like Tempe, Arizona, and go to start the bike, and it just sounds like fucking someone's got marbles in there. The chain slapping everywhere, and I'm like, fuck. So we run over to Chandler Harley Davidson real quick. It's right around the corner, I think. So I was in Chandler. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And kind of realize that one of the techs like, yeah, it sounds like the tensioner. I was like, all right, well, I don't have money, right? So I'm like, I'm gonna buy a thing of oil from you, and I'm gonna go in the parking lot and pull this thing out.
Yeah.
And so they lost their shit. So I was like, I found the AutoZone down the street, went down the street, got to the AutoZone.
Of course it did. Yeah.
And what it ended up being was the tensioner was a little bit loose, but it had the newer compensator that has like that T70. That thing was starting to back out.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So caught it, tightened that fucker down so tight, never had an issue ever again.
Yeah.
Same thing on the Gold FXR. The guy that was helping me, he helped me because I was scared more or less to align the tranny and primary or the tranny and the motor for the primary to go on, right?
Right.
So he's like, I'll come over and I'll do it. So he comes over to the house and does it. Well, then he puts the compensator and all that in, but he puts it in backwards where it's too close to the inner part of the primary.
Right.
And so once again, ride around Dallas, everything's fine. Leave, get to fucking Santa Fe the night me and Mike hung out. Uh-huh. And next morning wake up and it sounds like fucking death in that primary. So we go over to the Santa Fe Harley dealership, and I'm like, I pull it apart, and that became the common thread on that whole trip for that first Born Free I went to.
Right.
Until we got to NorCal in Tracy, actually, or at Manteca, and my buddy had a shop, and I just put on a lift and took it all apart, and that's when we noticed that it was backwards.
Right.
Fixed it, no more problems.
Damn.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it sucks that like, I think the world outside looking in, they see it as, oh, they don't know how to build bikes or whatever, blah, blah, blah. But the majority of people's bikes that are getting done to these levels, either it's a shop and they're doing it and they're not telling you the problems they have because they're insecure.
Sure.
Or, sometimes you get so proficient at it that you don't have problems. And that's obviously the goal that we always want to get to.
Sure.
And then there's the thing where it's like, shit happens, man. Like, half the people that build bikes don't ever ride them. Half the shops that build bikes don't even ride bikes anymore.
Right.
It's like fucking, know.
And it's like, like how often do like you or I like build a primary? Like what, once every year or something like that? Yeah. Like it's not like that like repetitive, like, oh, I just did this fucking 4 yesterday.
Last week.
It's like I'm just a fucking guy,
Yeah. All I like to tell people is like, look, I had a lot of problems on my bike, but I made it.
Yeah.
Every trip I've ever done, but And if you're one of those guys that's a mechanic that's like, oh, you know, I wouldn't have those problems. Like, well, then fucking ride. Come do a trip. Ride with us. Come be a part of it.
Sure.
Because right now you're what is it? Monday morning quarterbacking or armchair quarterbacking, whatever the fuck it's called. It's like, dude, just that wouldn't be a problem if I built that bike.
Right. Yeah. Woulda, coulda, shoulda, fucking.
Have you built a bike?
Yeah.
Aren't you like a maintenance king? Aren't you good at like making sure the oil level's good?
Yeah.
Fuck off. There you go. See, got these lights in
There
me.
you go. Fucking Miller Lite.
Let the hate out.
Brought to you by Miller Lite. Fuck yeah.
No, but I really do appreciate the help that you did. It was kind of I think the whole, you know, looking back on it now, like that whole day when we left Alpine, it was just kind of like a crazy amount of uncertainty. Anytime you leave your house on a bike trip, on a build, it's like the whole time you're like dialed into it. You're like, oh, what is this? What is this? What is this? Mm-hmm. We had the initial issue that we fixed, and then we had a whole day of beautiful riding.
Yeah.
And so spirits were high, everything was good, and then just have a whole fucking day of, dude, we had 3 batteries. I bought 2 new batteries.
There's one right there behind you there. Still here. Take it with you.
So there was just like constant amount of like that kind of stuff going on, right? Mm-hmm. And you know, when that thing finally let off there, and I was just fortunate to still have a signal and be able to put a filler out, and
right,
you answered and came through, and of course when you answered, like, I don't know what the fuck we're gonna be getting into, like I don't
kill y'all. Yeah,
it's like, you know, this dude's like coming to pick us up on the highways from New Mexico, and we're like, fuck, dude. Like, goddamn New Mexicans, dude.
Here we go. Yeah.
Lo and behold, we get to your house, and it's like fucking FXR goddamn haven, you know, and tools and all the hospitality. And I mean, even to this day, like all the, you know, Joey and Connor, like every once in a while we're at bike night going, man, you remember that? That shit was fucking wild, dude. Like that day started off so shitty, it ended so badass. And it was just because of like hospitality, you know what I mean? So
yeah, just fucking the shit you got to do, you know. Like, so my story about something similar, and the reason that I would even consider doing something like that for you is because you know, someone's done it for me, you know. I know what it's like to be in the situation. You're fucking shit out of luck. You're in a bad spot. You're not anywhere where you don't know anyone. You know, I was on my way back from Sturgis, 2014. You know, I think it was the second FXR show that Joe did up there. And so I was up there for that. And I was on my way back, and we rode through some fucking shit fucking weather, like just sideways rain all through Wyoming. Like fucking,
I know the feeling.
Down into Colorado. And, you know, and we're on bikes with no windshields, no fairings.
Yeah.
You know, just
taking it all.
Just fucking FXRs, 80-inch FXRs. And fucking just getting our asses kicked. You know, there's dudes just blowing by us on street glides with fucking flip-flops and baseball hats and shit. And we're just like, fuck, like, we're idiots, you know? And, but, you know, still having a blast. And so, you know, we get into Colorado, and fucking, you're headed over to stay in Manitou. Mm-hmm. You ever stay over there, Manitou Springs?
No. What part of Colorado are you coming into?
So it's like, it's Colorado Springs. And so it's like on the west side of Colorado Springs is Manitou. So here's the cool fucking thing about Manitou, especially if you're a heavy metal maniac, is that, you know, I think Colorado Springs is known as like one of the most like Christian places in the country. It's the home of like Focus on the Family and like all this like super like Christian shit. Yeah. And Manitou is like the most satanic place in the country. It's where Anton LaVey did a bunch of his fucking writing, and like it's like super fucking like spooky and fucking like it's a cool little town, you know. Like you would.
Is that where that little castle thing is and shit?
What, Bishop's Castle?
Yeah.
No, it's not that. But we hit that on that trip though. That was killer. But Manitou, you know, they have like natural spring water coming out of like all these like rock walls, like on the sidewalks. You can fill up your bottles and shit. And like,
hell yeah.
But there's like some like fucking weird shit that went down back in the day there, so we wanted to stay there, you know, like, oh, this is cool, you know. And so we're on our way to Manitou, and so we're on the 25 getting through Colorado Springs, and fucking my bike just dies, and it's fucking pouring rain, and I'm just like, fuck. And I see this like Harley sign like in the fucking distance, like on the other side, like we're like by an on ramp, or like maybe a mile from this like off ramp. And I see like on the other side of it, there's like this giant Harley sign. I'm like, what? Fuck, there's like a dealership right there. Like, what's up? And it's like 4:55 on like a Saturday or something like that, or no, it was like a weekday. We left Sturgis already, and so I call, and they're like, and I fucking like, dude, these guys aren't gonna do any fucking thing for me, like what the fuck, And so I call, and I'm like, what's up, like, I can see your fucking sign. I'm on the freeway. I'm fucking stranded. It's fucking pouring rain. I got some sort of electrical issue. The bike's dead, and fucking. And he's like, oh, like, what kind of bike you on? I'm like, 93 FXR. All right, I'm coming. And so the fucking dude comes in his fucking truck with another dude in the ramp and fucking loads me up. Fucking takes me back to the dealership. I'm like, dude, I'm going to get fucking hosed. Like, they're going to fucking rape me on this fucking thing, Yeah. And they're like, we'll call you in the morning. I'm like, all right. And so fucking, they get us unloaded. I fucking ride as a passenger on someone else's bike from the hotel. I'm like, let's see what this fucking becomes, but like as before we left, we see them closing up shop, and they're like all these like club guys, they're all like on FXRs. I'm just like, I'm like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool, like they're all the guys that work there, And so I was like, huh, interesting. And so fucking they were like, they had asked me a little bit, where are you coming from? Where are you going? I'm like, oh, I'm coming from Sturgis. I'm going back to LA. I'm just coming through. And like, you're like, oh, right on, fucking cool. Nice FXR, blah, blah, blah. So fucking, we're at the hotel, and they call me in the morning, and they're like, all right, bro, your bike's done. And it's like, oh yeah? Like, what do I owe you? And I'm like, I'm like just about out of money. I'm like, we're like a couple days from home. I'm like fucking on fumes, and fucking, and they're like $80. I'm like, fucking dealership? I'm like, what? Yeah. He's like, yeah, come and get it. It's good to go. And fucking get back over there, and fucking they like, yeah, we detailed it, and fucking,
damn,
and like
that's cool.
Fucking did new stator, new plug, everything, $80. And I was just like, damn, bro, like that's fucking awesome.
Did he give you a reason, or did you even ask for one?
I was just like, that's super cool. He's all right, have a good rest of your trip, and just turned around and walked away. I was like, hey, what kind of beer you guys drink? And he's all, Coors Light. I'm like, all right. And so I fucking ran and grabbed a 30 pack of Coors Light, and fucking brought it back over to him, dropped it on the counter, and took off.
That's crazy.
But man, I mean, like, I would have been so fucked if that dude didn't do that. Fucked.
Dude, like, could you imagine? You know what they probably did? They probably got some beer, hung out there, just rinsing all night, hanging out the same way we would in a garage.
It could be.
Just dialing in that bike. That's pretty fucking cool, actually.
Dude, it was like flawlessly detailed, fucking like, so yeah, you're fucking, like the thing with the Evo, the stator plug, fucking,
yeah,
it's that funky thing coming out of the primary, and like once it gets hot and wet and oily, fucking things kind of start melting, and they touch each other, and then your stator shot,
Yeah.
And fucking, that was I've gone through a lot of stators on that bike.
For real?
Oh yeah. Yeah, just because fucking they get beat on, and fucking I don't know what it is, but
that's you.
Yeah,
you're riding too hard, man.
Yeah,
too much power.
Yeah. So so that was my like fucking I got saved fucking experience, and like it was fucking I could have had a really bad, really fucking expensive night. I'd be calling a tow truck and getting towed to a hotel. I don't know where I'd be going.
Yeah,
like Harley's closed. It's fucking like, where am I gonna go?
Yeah.
And so, like, I had no idea what to do. So, like, those guys just came through and swooped me up. And, they were like, it wasn't like fucking going to someone's house or nothing like that, but it was definitely getting my ass saved.
Yeah.
And
definitely.
I, like, appreciated the fuck out of that,
Yeah, yeah, there's that too. Man, like, it's definitely something that I feel like, one thing that, like, me and my wife, we've put up a lot of people over the years coming through the house. Just to help people that are traveling, you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
And like there was a point in time where like Joe Kidd had like his own room in my house. Because he was always in Texas for so long, and he'd always be coming through, and he smoked up all my wife's weed, and nah, he's always been a good dude. We used to have like some of the best conversations just hanging out in the garage and shit.
Okay.
And but like that part of like motorcycling is the thing that you don't think about. That ends up being the raddest part. Like you were saying earlier, like, you do all this for you. It's like, this, just being able to have like the motorcycle is for you, like to fill that meter up. But
yeah,
kind of like the icing on the cake gets to be some of the people that you get to be around.
Yeah, totally.
And the hangs and the perspectives. And for me, I like it because, I'm from Dallas, I'm from the middle of the country. And so, I get to, through motorcycling, I mean, yeah, you could say this podcast too, but through motorcycling, I get to meet you, like a guy that's, toured the world in rock bands, now is building movie sets. Like, to me, like, that shit's all interesting because that's not something I grew up next to.
Right.
I didn't, we skated, and, the things that you were skating with and the people you were skating with are the people that we were looking up in magazines in Texas waiting on them to come do a demo at Fast Forward. You know what I'm saying?
Totally.
It's just like a perspective thing, man. And, there's been times where, like, I remember, dude, like the first time, what was it? Man, it's countless. It's countless times like that where you find yourself hanging out in a spot that's just like out of happenstance. And it's like, dude, this dude's there. This dude's there. It's like, fuck.
Yeah.
I love that shit. That's what I love about it.
Yeah, totally.
When you were that story the other day, I think it was yesterday, the day before, when you were pulling this out and just seeing like all the guys here and stuff like that. Like, that's rad.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
I love that. It's like, that's what it's all about, and it's like, those guys here have been like really cool to me.
Yeah.
It's like, so we moved here, I show up with all my bikes. I'm like, oh, there goes the neighborhood. I'm in this like weird neighborhood to like fucking, it's a cool neighborhood. It's nice, but it's kind of like older people.
Yeah.
And like they're going to hate me, but it's like, it's all old military dudes. They all had a panhead or a shovelhead or something. They all want to see what's in the garage.
Yeah.
They all come through here all the time. Oh, you got another one. What's this? Blah, blah, blah. Like they're fucking pumped. They love it. So, neighbors are fucking awesome. But, I was riding here, I go out and ride, the east, right out the door is old Route 66, and you're up in the East Mountains in like fucking 10 minutes, and there was a great like biker bar up there that just recently closed called Molly's. That was like super fucking cool. That I, like I'd do some work on a bike, fucking go out and shake it down, ride it up to the fucking, ride up to Molly's, and fucking if it went good, I'd have 2 beers, fucking maybe 3, and fucking come home, But there's a bunch of great riding, the mountains, the fucking Sandia Crest, the South 14, bunch of killer shit. So I'm out riding. Once in a while, I see like another bike with like T-bars or a fairing or something like that. But like I'm like not seeing anybody around. It's like it's all fucking like, to me, my impression of it as an outsider looking in, coming here, is that like this is like 2005 motorcycle style wise. Like it is like electric glides or soft tails with fucking, fucking is just like, there's not, and that's like, I think that's probably a lot of America, it's just like, people, it's not the fucking West Coast. It's not fucking a blacked out street bob. It's not fucking any of that stuff. So, one time I'm up at Molly's, and this dude rolls up on me. He's all, is that your FXR out there? And he's like all fucking excited. And it's Mike.
Yeah.
And so of course we start talking and stuff. And he's wearing like a FXR Bazaar shirt. I'm like, oh, this guy actually knows what that is. No shit, And so we start talking and shit. And he comes over the next day. And he's like, I'm building a twin cam FXR. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm just finishing mine right now. You should come check it out. He's like, what? And he's like, fucking doesn't know anyone here is doing that shit,
Yeah.
So, we hit it off, and we've been riding a bunch together, and like, it's been super fucking cool, And so, that kind of like progressed into him, like, he's had the idea for a while to like kind of get like a night going. And so, he was kind of like floating the idea around a little bit of like doing like a little like Tuesday, like a T-bar Tuesday kind of thing, and just getting something going. And he started it up, and was like, if you do it, I'll come, I'll be there, And so fucking, he started it up, and we were doing it at this bar for fucking a couple months, and it would be like, like I think the first or second one, there was like 6 or 8 guys who showed up who fucking no one had ever seen before. Like you're like, oh, like there's dudes who are into this shit here. Holy fuck, Like I know that the guys are here, but it's just like there's not really anything happening to like, pull it all together. And so, it kind of went like that for a little while, and like, it was like, like one table of like, 8 to 10 guys maybe. Yeah. And it was just super chill. It was fucking great, and then we moved over to this other bar. The first bar kind of fucking, they were like kind of vibing us a little bit. They didn't, I don't know if they weren't happy with us or they were just understaffed or something, but they just weren't giving us any love, you know, like we're coming there every week. We're tipping good. We're fucking buying drinks and dinner and not being rowdy, you know, kind of thing. Just super fucking chill. It's super just nerd shit. Everybody's like seeing each other's bikes, nerding out, fucking just happy to fucking see anything happening here, you know?
Yeah.
And so we move over to this other bar and then it just kind of starts taking off. Like, it's just fucking, like, all of a sudden there's like 25, 30 bikes coming and like, it's like, fuck, like, this is cool. Like, nice bikes. Like, this dude showed up with this like fully fucking decked out, like, ST with a 131, Lindahl everything, Brembo everything. Like, it's fucking thing's a rocket ship. It's badass. I'm just like, who the fuck are you? Like, what? He's like, yeah, you know, I'm a sport bike guy. I just got this thing and just found out about this and showed up. I'm just like, killer, you know?
Yeah.
He's a cool dude, you know? But it's just like, you know, it gives you, you know, it's exciting to see that there's some stuff like that happening here in New Mexico because, you know, I know it's here, but, you know, I don't think that there's been anything like cohesive enough to kind of get everyone together. And it's like, you know, it's very much just like a get together. That's all it is. It's just like, come out, have a beer, you know, fucking go home. Like, you know, shoot the shit. And a lot of us have become friends because of it, you know, and I've actually made some really good friends out of it. You know, the dudes are fucking awesome. So, So, yeah, it's been cool. You know, it's everything I want it to be, you know, and you know, obviously, you know, they all rode up to Durango and, you know, my wife and I rode up with you to Durango. And so, you know, there was like 6 of us up there in Durango, which is like fucking pretty cool, you know?
Yeah. And that's kind of the point, man. Like, you know, our trips that we do with our homies started from the bike night. I mean, I'd been doing trips myself through bike club stuff and things like that prior to that, but you know, doing the bike night, starting it off, you know, and I'm sitting there like, man, like I'm, you know, kind of like, man, I don't know where I want to go this year. I'm going somewhere. Where are you talking? Like what? Like ride somewhere? Like, yeah, you know, trying to honey dick them into like going on some trips with me and shit. And they finally kind of like bit, and I'm like, you know, to me, a bike night has always been a good place to count on people to show up together, just to you know, decompress, get out of the normal life that you got to deal with. But man, like, what do you want to do this year? Like, you know, one of the things I asked people at bike night last week, I was like, people, you know, and I'm realizing this now, everybody and their mom likes to say, I don't have any New Year's resolutions. I'd change on the fly in the middle of the year. Well, what do you want to do next year at, you know, let's just say February. So it's not a new year. Right. And I was like, you know, like the fun thing about coming to bike night is to, you know, hey, what do you think, man? Should we ride somewhere this year? You want to go on a trip, little weekend jammer, or do a week trip or 10-day trip or Sturgis or camp out or something? Yeah. And you get them fucking talking, and then they go home and they think about it at night and the next couple of days, and then it kind of comes back next week like, man, I've been thinking about what you said, man. I think you want to do it? Let's do something. And you start traveling. You start doing bigger things, and it all stems from these smaller conversations at bike night. And it doesn't have to be, you know, 10 days across the country. It could be, hey, man, let's do a weekend trip to Rio Doso. Right. Just go fucking party and ride and do something, you know? Yeah. And, you know, it's some dudes are only going to be able to get that, you know, Tuesday off. And some dudes are are in the point in their life like, you're speaking my language. This is exactly what I'm looking for right now. Yeah. But people got to be like, you got to be able to throw it on the table and like see if it sticks, you know? Totally.
And it's like, you know, these guys, they got these bikes. Do they want to ride them or not? You know? And like, I think that, you know, like they've put together a couple rides. Like, you know, we did a big loop up to Bandelier National Monument and fucking back, you know, go through the Jemezes and all that stuff. Yeah. And, you know, they did another one just up to like the mine shaft up there, you know. So, you know, they're kind of like baby stepping into like, just like, hey, let's go do a day ride, you know, like start there, you know. But you know, it's still like really young, you know. It's been going for what, you know, it's just started this year, you know. So
that's cool. Yeah.
So, but it's like, it's got like a solid foundation now, even that it's cold, you know, like there's still dudes coming out and fucking dudes riding out. And
so I remember our first year that we did it in 2017, like, of course, when it got cold, you know, we're like, fuck this. Like, we Ubered up there and shit. We did a Secret Santa on our first one. Yeah. Or not a secret, it was either a Secret Santa or like a white elephant style. Yeah, yeah. Where we all just brought presents and then we did like numbers or some shit there. Yeah. And it was just fun because, like, you know, the bikes obviously, right, is what get us there. But it's the other shit that, like, becomes like a different part, like a different, I don't know. It's like, why not do shit like that? Yeah. And there was these, like, I don't know what happened to them, but like North Carolina had like a club style page for a while that they were doing bike nights, and they were doing like theme bike nights where they'd have like the Hawaiian shirt theme. I was like, all right, yeah, maybe a little much, but kind of cool. Like I wouldn't mind doing something like that. It's fun. Yeah, it's just not to take away some of the serious like hard ass biker shit off the table.
Totally.
You know, like I thought that was pretty cool. They had like a dad like dad vibe night where everybody had like New Balances on.
Members only jacket.
Yeah. It's
shit.
like
that's
I
cool.
was like, that shit's fucking rad, man. Like that's what it's supposed to be about. Is like, I think that what is important about carry on motorcycle culture is to recognize what was created by, you know, multiple generations of other bikers, and then, man, that looked fun. Like that looks like something good. Can I take that premise, put it in today's standards or today's world, and maybe add a new element to it to make it our own? And you know, that's a camp out. That's runs. Like you were telling me about the run that was Tone. The one that Troy. Yeah, Troy had put on. I didn't know about the like killing the bikes at the top of the hill and coasting down like that. Sounds fucking rad.
Yeah, it's super cool.
But even like you know, my buddy that does the Terralingo run, which is an amazing event, like that, doing a shot, getting everybody together to take that shot. Yeah, I'm doing that, dude. That is absolutely the way it brought people together for a minute. Yeah, you know.
Otherwise, it's like dudes with the dudes they came with, and maybe no one's talking to each other. It breaks the ice a little bit, you know. Everyone fucking. No one needs to take themselves so fucking seriously, you know. Just fucking relax, you know. Yeah,
there's a lot of cool things, man. It's like, and I mean, I feel like the way to do it is like if you know, if I do the whole shot thing at our camp out, like I'm gonna tell everybody at the camp out where that came from. Right. You know, it's like too many people, I feel like, constantly try to like. Not try, or they just maybe they don't think about it, but always paying respects to where you get your inspiration from, even if it's not, you know, even if you added your own flavor to it. Like it's about showing, you know what I mean? Yeah. I could have been like, oh, I got the best FXR chopper ever. No one's ever done it's huge. It's like everybody else did it. They sucked, you know, but no, it's like I got my inspiration from these other people. Totally. You know, and more than like I want people to see my bike, I want them to know where the inspiration came from, where the influence and all that, you know what I mean? So I don't know, it's just like part of like the thing that we got to start doing more as a community is like, just dude, you're not going to get less followers because you got this idea from somewhere else. Yeah. Like you go flip open an old Easy Rider and check out In the Wind, and what are they doing there? Like, oh shit, that looks like something fun. We should try that. Right. Hey, one day I was flipping through my old Easy Rider and I saw this cool idea. Not like, oh, I went on a vision quest and found out this thing that no one's ever done in motorcycles. It's come on, man.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, it's just people can have fun with it, and like I don't know. There's a lot of people who kind of take themselves like pretty seriously with it, and like. Maybe they're just super serious people. I don't know. But like to me, it's, you know, it's fun, and it's how I fucking let loose and fucking relax. And, you know, it's funny, like, you know, when you talk about like the camp out and like stuff like that, and like, you know, my personal journey in life has taken me to like, you know, like a lot of like in the music world, a lot of like big events. Right. Yeah. And I've had my fill. Yeah. You know, like playing the big fucking metal festivals and all that shit. I mean, you know, we did the Ozfest tour in 2010. We did fucking all sorts of huge ass festivals in Europe and shit like that. And like, I just got fucking burnt on it, you know, and fucking, it's like, you know, I did Sturgis 1 year, 2014, and writing is out of this world. Yeah. Incredible fucking writing up there, you know. There's some terrain up there like shit I've never seen anywhere else, you know. Like all the black rocks with like the blue flowers coming out of them along the streams and shit when you come in, like on the west side. I can't remember what it's called now. Like, is it Deadwood that way, or
you come through Lead and then into Lead. Deadwood.
And you know, like coming in like from Wyoming that way, and I was just like, fuck, this is the shit. And then I got there and I'm just like, dude, like it's hard for me, you know. It's hard. Like I couldn't get out of there fast enough. I think I was there for 2 nighs.
For real.
Yeah. And like,
where'd you stay?
In some fucking hotel. I don't know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we were in a hotel and fucking went to the FXR show and like went downtown one night and fucking like walked around and we're just like, fuck.
Yeah.
Like, it was like,
Well,
I don't know. I don't know if I got the full experience, but
Yeah.
I was also, I'm a little agoraphobic maybe. Like, I just like the crowds and shit just fucking weird me out. And it's
Yeah.
like now, like this year I knew a bunch of people who were in Sturgis, and like Lindsay and I that week on purpose, we rode to Sedona.
Oh,
right.
yeah.
And we fucking brought tubes, and we fucking tubed the river there fucking all week.
Yeah.
And it was sick. Like, we got the time zone. Like, that's how we like to fucking chill. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, like I'll come to the camp out and I'll have a great time. Don't get me wrong. But, but it's like, I think like the big fucking crowd thing isn't for everybody. It's
Yeah.
like some people just want to fucking do their own thing, and they just want to fucking,
Yeah, it just depends. It depends on how you determine what the big crowd is, and that could be 50 people, right?
Totally.
Depends, or like our camp out, at one, like not last year but the year before, we probably hit like 1,100 people, and it was fun still, but at the same time, like I like it smaller. I think that we're probably this year we're going to be stripping away a lot of the things that we started adding in that I felt like made it more of a spectacle, and that's never what it was supposed to be about.
Right.
So while we will do a couple of giveaways, like what it's been the last 2 years, it's not going to be that anymore. I'm not doing t-shirts.
Yeah.
Like the last couple of years of having to make t-shirts to try to sell them to, because I'm like $5,000, $4,000 wrapped up in these shirts. I need to sell 200 of them to fucking break even.
Right.
Like that shit gets old, and that's not why I want to. Like I always make things because I want to do them.
Right. Totally.
Like the FXR tour, something Justin and I put together because we wanted to do it.
Sure.
We were like, well, fuck, we're never going to get asked to be an invited builder or anything in this world. Let's just start our own event and do it ourselves,
Sure.
or the camp out or the bike night or, those kind of things. So, I do want to, the thing is like when we started the camp out, the same way we started the bike night, hey, 20 people show up, that's fine.
Yeah.
This isn't really about that. It's about like the experience and having fun.
Totally.
So, and it got to a point where I was like, well, fuck, man. Like I started trying to get all these brands to give us stuff to give away. And next thing you know, it's like, well, if I don't have enough people coming, then man, it's not going to be good. It's like, whoa. This thing started as like 40 people sitting around a campfire.
Right.
And part of me is okay if it goes back to 40 people sitting around a campfire.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because
Totally.
I'm not going to say that it hasn't been a blast these last couple of years with these, 4, 5, 6, 7, 800 people.
Yeah.
But I still had fun at 40 people. So like, it is what it is, man.
Totally. Yeah.
And it's not like I'm buying this. I'm not paying for the venue. Like you pay the camping fees, they make their money.
Yeah.
And yes, I have made money selling t-shirts, but
Sure.
it's not really worth the effort, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, you want it to be just an event you want to go to, or is it like an enterprise?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. I mean,
it can be both.
Yeah, it can, but I don't want to work it, dude.
Yeah.
And it is rad when you see like a Fast Life camp out shirt somewhere, Born Free or something like that. It's like it is totally awesome. It's so badass. But I don't know. I feel like what I would rather people gain out of the camp out is the experience of riding, and not like, oh, I got the t-shirt, you know, which, like I said, I'm not a good businessman.
Yeah. I've like, I don't know how great of a businessman I am either. Like the band stuff was very much the same way for me. It was like, it was much more about us wanting to go, like, we want to play with that band in that place. Like, it was not about like how are we going to make money?
Yeah.
I mean, like we had merch and records and all that shit, but it was like, that was not the prime objective ever,
100%.
And, it wasn't sustainable doing that, and, I think our partying at the time didn't help either. We were a hot mess. We had a little bit of a reputation for fucking, even when we were trying to be good boys.
What was the band called?
Called the Saviors.
Saviors.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And we would, we'd get to a fucking town on a Tuesday night and be like, we're just chilling the night. And then someone shows up. Oh, here's a bag and here's this. And like, let's party. I'm like, okay, here we go. And it's like, fucking, that was
you sniffed out the ruckus,
dude. Like, and so dudes just expected it from us, like we had to be, we'd get to fucking wherever the fuck, and it was time to party again. And like, some of us got like pretty sucked up in it, like fucking people had drinking problems and drug problems and all that shit, that comes with that stuff. And it became like, not super fun, you know?
Yeah.
And like I kind of had got into bikes and pulled myself out of some of the hard partying. And so I was kind of like the more sober one.
Yeah.
Suddenly, kind of like babysitting everybody. And I was like, this sucks even more than it did before. Like, I fucking hate this, you know? I think the last big tour we did in the U.S. was with Corrosion to Conformity, the full U.S. Every show was like sold out or damn near sold out. Fucking crowds were fucking great. We sold a ton of shit. 6-week tour. Like 3 weeks into it, I was like, I hate this. Like it was a fucking tour that like any of our peers would have loved to have been on, you know?
Yeah.
And it was a great situation, but it was just like, I'm not having fun with this shit anymore. This is fucking, you know.
And it's like being honest with yourself, right? It's like being honest with like, man, you know, that's one of the things I want to ask you, and we can start wrapping up after this, but like, how do you, like, what's the feeling? And I'm asking this kind of as a personal question as well. Like, letting go of something you've put so much into your life, as far as like, there's no way to say it that doesn't sound like giving up, even though I don't think I wouldn't say you gave up on it. It's just like you lived it.
Right.
And now you're, you know, for lack of a better term, over it. But what was the struggle like going through your head of like coming to terms with that, if that makes sense?
You know, it's you know, I wouldn't take back any of the experiences that I ever had. We had overall an amazing fucking time doing all that shit. But like, it got to the point where like, I don't think there was ever a point where like I felt like, oh, I'm giving up, like I'm throwing in the towel. It was like, I'm fucking sick of this. Like, it's a fucking grind. You know, you learn that like, you know, you can't hold relationships together with your family or your fucking loved ones or whatever. It's like you're gone all the time. You're fucking a puddle, an alcoholic fucking puddle, you know, at least we were. And, you know, it was just like super unhealthy, and I just wasn't happy. And it was just like, this sucks, you know? And when I'm not doing this, when I'm not on the road, I'm happy. I can be happy, but I'm not happy doing this shit. So maybe it's time to stop, you know? And like, you know, after I stopped that band, you know, I played in some other bands in LA on a much more like hobby level, you know, where it was like, we play a couple shows a year. And it was fucking great. We'd have a fucking great time. You know, we'd get together, we practice every week, have a couple beers at the practice space.
Oh, so you still got your, like, more or less your fix within.
Yeah, I mean, you're getting the fix, and, you know, you're getting, like, the creative itch scratched, but you're not doing all the other shit, you know? It's like, you know, there are ways to do this where you're not a fucking total road dog, you know?
Yeah.
And, like, we did the road dog thing. It was fucking awesome. Like, a lot of people would love to do it. A lot of people, like, you know, kind of like glamorize it or fetishize it or whatever. Like, oh, I wish I could do that. And it's like, do you really? Like, it's brutal. Like, yes, I got to see some cool places and like do some just crazy unimaginable shit, you know? But, you know, in the end, it's like, you can't do it for fucking ever, you know? So I'm totally at peace with what I did and where I left it. And I'd love to still be playing, you know, but it's just at a point now where I'm just so busy with work and like all the guys I was playing with.
Seems like you get like a satisfaction out of creating stuff at work too, though. Yeah,
I mean, the work stuff can be cool. And, you know, I have a little studio here where I'm like, you know, just like making shit by myself, like recording and doing whatever. And I have like no ambition with that stuff. I don't care if anyone ever hears it, you know. I have fun with it. Again, it's for me, you know. It's like this thing where like I'm happy with just playing guitar and programming drums and doing whatever, and it's like, it's fucking cool. I'm like, oh cool, I did that, it sounds rad. And I'm like, oh, that part sucks, and like whatever, and I'll fix it. And that's enough for me to like scratch that itch at that point, you know. I'm happy with that. And like I do feel when I've been away from it, and even in that little room recording, when I've been away from that, I definitely like realize how much I missed it when I get in there, you know. I'm like, oh fuck, like I need to be doing this all the time.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that's kind of like a good perspective for me, I guess. Because I looked at it like, you know, like even though in certain aspects of like what I've done, you know, like in my career, it's like I don't hate it. I'm just over certain parts of it, you know, like I'm certain grinds, certain like boxes I got to try to be, you know, in to, you know, be relevant and all that type of shit. You know, it's like kind of what we were talking about dinner, like just the whole social media demand whenever like I reluctantly gave up all my control of where my income comes from to social media. Right. And because it was so great for so long. And then now it's like, now, you know, I think I might have said it earlier. It's like, all right, do I start dancing now to get people to look at my paint work?
I bet you're a good dancer.
Yeah, probably. No rhythm.
But no,
or,
I know what you mean, man.
You know,
like, it's hard. Or you just do something for yourself and find another path, you know? Who fucking knows?
Yeah, and I have a few outlets to kind of keep me sane and whatnot, but yeah, it's just one of those things. It's like, man, like, I think the hardest term is like, I haven't literally airbrushed a picture of anything in over a year. And that's the one that, like, when I think about it, it kind of like, it hurts a little bit because of how badly I wanted to be an airbrush artist.
Right.
You know, I still remember myself in 2007, like, just indulging it every day. Like, I have to touch this thing every day because I want to be good. And, you know, and then you finally kind of like hit some milestones with it in your life and you're like, oh shit, like, I'm good-ish or whatever.
Yeah.
And then you just, like, you know, the industry changes. It's like, it's kind of like we were talking about with the music stuff, like how, you know, grunge became such a better platform of music than what you were doing.
Right. Or even like just the record labels falling apart and like nobody is able to like really make a career out of it anymore.
Yeah.
You know? Like,
the whole industry
like
falls
no one
out.
can get fucking paid unless you're back to being a road dog. I mean, you know, the really crazy thing is like, you know, when that band really started picking up, we kind of like, we were touring hard and like the label collapse kind of began. And what you started seeing was like every artist that was still alive from like the 1950s until modern times that still had a back catalog and they were living on those royalties, and all of a sudden that dried up. No one was selling records anymore. And all of a sudden everyone's getting the band back together, and you're in Boise on a Tuesday night and there's fucking 8 shows and fucking no one has a good show. They're all poorly attended because you're spreading out the crowd to all these different venues. And fucking, it just became this thing where it was this fucking fight to the bottom, you know? It was like,
yeah, it is weird because there was a whole bunch of that getting back together. You know, Pink Floyd.
Oh yeah, reunion fever, man. Like
fucking, they tried their ass off to get Led Zeppelin back together for the longest, huh? I don't know if they ever did. I think they did actually.
They
right?
did it in some capacity with his son playing drums or something like that. You know,
the one I have a hard time with is Leonard Skinner.
Yeah,
because like there's the Leonard Skinner since you know Van Zandt died, and then there's like Leonard Skinner,
right?
And I don't know.
Yeah.
Same thing with, even though you don't like them, Alice in Chains. I can't deal with the
There's
news.
a really insanely good Leonard Skinner cover band. I think they're out of Tucson called Mr. Skinnerd.
Oh shit.
And they're like a 70s accurate like version of Leonard Skinner with like fucking like 2 drummers and like a backup singers and everything.
Damn.
It's fucking awesome.
Yeah, watching, like, I watched, a big Skinner fan, but watching the little documentary and, you know, yeah, it was like rad seeing, like, they had it was like an orchestra up there, dude. Like, just going at it. All the guitar players and everything.
Yeah.
It was wild, man. Love them. All right, man.
Yeah.
It's been good, dude. We did way more than I thought we were going to do.
Fuck yeah. Cool. Well, hopefully you got something usable there and I had a great time. Thank you for having me.
Scott's Garage.
Here we are.
I was trying to think of something to call this, like the name of this podcast.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because you just can't put Scott on there.
Scott, dude, that's it.
Scott. That might be the biggest flex of a podcast name. Just put Scott on there.
Yeah, just like the old Harley shirt. If you have to ask, you'll never understand.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, man. I really appreciate it.
Oh yeah, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
I hope you guys enjoyed that. I want to thank Scott again for taking me into his home, feeding me, and showing me a good time. I appreciate it, bud. And I hope you guys enjoyed this episode with him. I know I did, and find it very awesome to get to know this man over these last couple of months, and looking forward to doing cool shit with him over this next year. You guys already know we have a lot going on. If you know, I guess you don't really know. Yeah, we have a lot of shit going on. I did this trip to the Northwest. We got a lot of episodes recorded, and we're coming back to a very, very cold DFW, Dallas-Fort Worth area. And we're trying to get some paint work done for some Daytona projects and, put out some more content for you guys. And one of the best things this year, especially as we kind of move into the next phase of the Fast Life podcast, our 6th year as we move into it, we're going to be doing some things differently and growing this thing in different ways and trying to tell more inspiring stories. That's one of my goals this year. Is I want you to find more value out of what you hear on this podcast. And I can't promise it. There's not going to be some of us getting drunk and having a good time like we've always done. But the focus is to bring to you guys some stories and some perspectives that I hope you find some interest in and around the motorcycle world, of course, and that's the plan. So if you guys want to help us make that happen, please check out our sponsors down below in the description. Yes, I am working on some Patreon content right now, so if you don't mind, if you want to support that, if you want to help me do this thing, then please go to our Patreon, subscribe to it. If you're not on there now, there's plenty of content there, but we're doing new stuff. I very much appreciate everything you guys have been doing for this podcast over the years, listening, sharing, and telling your friends about it. And yeah, all I want to say is thank you, and let's fucking go this year. All right. We'll see you on the next one. Peace.